You are standing in a narrow bedroom on the second floor of a stone house in Salon de Provence, in the south of France. It is July 1st, 1566. Outside, the summer heat presses against the walls like a living thing. Inside, the air smells of dried herbs, candle wax, and something else, something sour and final. A man lies in the bed before you. He is 62 years old, but he looks older. His body is swollen with dropsy. His joints ache with gout so severe he cannot walk. His hands, once steady enough to perform surgery, once precise enough to mix medicines that saved thousands, now tremble against the wool blanket. But his eyes are still sharp. He has not eaten in 3 days. He has refused all medicine. The local priests have come and gone. His wife, and sits in the corner, weeping silently. His children, 6 of them, from his second marriage, wait downstairs, not understanding why their father will not let them near him. The man in the bed is Michel de Nostradamus, and he is about to do something impossible. He turns to his secretary, Jean-Aime de Chavigny, and speaks in a voice barely above a whisper. "Tomorrow, at sunrise, you will find me dead." Chavigny stares at him. The room falls silent except for the ring. "Do not weep," Nostradamus continues. "I have seen it. I have always seen it. Tomorrow, the 1st of July, I will not see the sun rise. And neither will you. Not in this room, not beside this bed. You will find me when the light comes." He closes his eyes. Chavigny does not sleep that night. He paces the hallway. He checks on his master every hour. At midnight, Nostradamus is breathing. At 2 in the morning, he is still breathing. At 4, Chavigny falls asleep in a chair outside the door. When he wakes, the first gray light of dawn is slipping through the shutters. He rushes into the room. Michel de Nostradamus is dead. Exactly as he said. Exactly when he said. The man who spent his life predicting the future had predicted his own death with the precision of a clockmaker. But here is the question that will haunt you for the next 2 hours. If he could see the moment of his own death, what else did he see? Imagine you are alive in the year 1503. You are not safe. No one is safe. The world you inhabit is not the world of fairy tales. It is a world where the ground itself seems to burn, where faith is not a private matter, but a matter of life and death, where the wrong prayer whispered in the wrong room can end with you tied to a stake, surrounded by dry wood, while your neighbors watch you burn. This is Europe in the 16th century. The Catholic Church, which has held spiritual power over Western Europe for 1,000 years, is beginning to crack. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther will nail 95 theses to a church door in Wittenberg, and the Protestant Reformation will explode across the continent like gunpowder. Kings will choose sides, armies will march, and ordinary people, farmers, merchants, mothers, children, will be caught in the middle of a war that has no battlefields, only churches and town squares. But we are not there yet. In 1503, the Inquisition is already 100 years old. It was created to root out heresy, any belief that challenged the Church's authority. And in Spain, it has become something monstrous. Since 1492, when Ferdinand and Isabella expelled the Jews from their kingdom, the Spanish Inquisition has hunted, tortured, and executed thousands of people. Not for crimes, for blood, for ancestry, for being born into the wrong family. And France is not far behind. In the south of France, in a region called Provence, there is a different kind of tension. Here, the soil is rich with olive groves and vineyards. The air smells of lavender and rosemary. The light is golden and warm. It is, by any measure, one of the most beautiful places on earth. But beauty does not mean safety. Provence has its own dark secret. For centuries, it has been home to Jewish communities, some of the oldest in Europe. These Jews have lived here since before France existed. They have built synagogues, created schools, practiced medicine, and traded across the Mediterranean. They have been part of the fabric of this land. And then, in 1481, Provence was absorbed into the Kingdom of France. And France did not want Jews. In 1394, France had expelled its Jewish population. For over a century, Jews were forbidden from living in the kingdom, but Provence was not yet part of France. So Provence became a refuge, a place where Jewish families could still practice their faith, still raise their children, still hope. That ended in 1481. Now, Provence is French, and French law says, convert or leave. But here is where the story gets complicated, because many Jews did convert. They were baptized. They took Christian names. They went to church. They ate pork. They did everything the church demanded. And the church still did not believe them. These converts, called conversos in Spain, Marranos by their enemies, new Christians by the church, lived in a shadow world. They were Christians by law, but many still practiced Judaism in secret. They lit candles on Friday nights. They avoided pork. They whispered prayers in Hebrew when no one was listening. And if they were caught, the Inquisition was waiting. In 1503, the year our story begins, the fear of the Inquisition hangs over Provence like a storm that never breaks. Everyone knows someone who disappeared. Everyone has heard the stories of torture, the strappado, where a victim's arms are tied behind their back and they are lifted into the air until their shoulders dislocate. The water torture, where cloth is forced down the throat until the victim drowns from the inside. The rack, where limbs are stretched until bones crack. And then the fire. Always the fire. This is the world into which Michel de Nostradamus will be born. Not a world of peace. Not a world of safety. A world where identity itself is a death sentence. Where your grandfather's faith can destroy your future. Where the wrong word at the wrong moment can end everything. His mother is a woman named Rainière de Saint-Remy. She is pregnant. She is walking through the marketplace of Saint-Remy de Provence, a small town nestled in the foothills of the Alpes Hills Mountains. The sun is warm. The olives are ripening. She is smiling. She does not know that the child she carries will one day be the most famous prophet in history. She does not know that this child will grow up in a house where books are hidden in walls, where Hebrew prayers are whispered at midnight, where the family name itself, Nostradamus, a French version of the Hebrew name Netanyahu or Notre Dame, is a mask, a disguise, a lie told to survive. She does not know that her son will spend his entire life walking a tightrope between two worlds, the Christian world that protects him and the Jewish world that made him. And she does not know that, in the end, the weight of that walk will nearly destroy him. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Before we meet the boy, we must understand the world that will make him. And to understand that world, we must go back, not to 1503, but to 1492, the year everything changed. In 1492, Spain expelled its entire Jewish population. Over 200,000 people were forced to leave the land their families had lived in for 1,000 years. They were given 3 months. They could take nothing of value. Their homes were confiscated. Their synagogues were turned into churches. Their cemeteries were plowed under. Some went to North Africa. Some went to the Ottoman Empire. Some went to Italy. And some, the lucky ones, the ones with connections, the ones who could still trade and practice medicine, went to Provence. But even in Provence, they were not safe. In 1493, just 1 year after the Spanish expulsion, the French Inquisition began operating in Provence. Its mission was simple: find the secret Jews. Find the ones who had converted but were still practicing their old faith. Find them, try them, burn them. And they were very good at their job. Between 1493 and 1503, dozens of people were executed in Provence for Judaizing. Men, women, children, entire families. The message was clear: convert completely or die completely. This is the atmosphere into which Michel de Nostradamus is born. Fear is not an abstract concept. It is the air he breathes. It is the water he drinks. It is the silence that falls over the dinner table when a stranger knocks at the door. His family is not just a family. It is a conspiracy. And into this conspiracy, on December 14th or 21st, 1503, a boy is born. His name is Michel. It is a Christian name, a safe name, a name that says, I belong here. I am one of you. I am not a threat. But his last name, de Nostradamus, is a translation. In Hebrew, his family name is something else entirely. Something that connects him to a tradition of scholars, doctors, and mystics that stretches back to the Babylonian exile. A tradition of people who read the stars, who studied the Talmud, who believed that the universe was a book written by God, and that every page contained a secret. Michel de Nostradamus will spend his life trying to read that book, and he will pay a terrible price for what he finds. Saint Remy de Provence is not a large town. In 1503, it has perhaps 2,000 people. It sits in a valley surrounded by limestone hills that glow white in the Mediterranean sun. The streets are narrow and winding, designed not for cars but for donkeys and foot traffic. The houses are built of stone, with thick walls to keep out the summer heat and the winter cold. It is a town of farmers, merchants, and craftsmen, of olive oil and wine, of churches that have stood for 800 years, and of secrets. The house where Michel grows up is on the Rue de la Grande Fusterie, the street of the great woodworker. It is a modest house, neither rich nor poor. His father, Jean de Nostradamus, is a grain merchant. He buys wheat and barley from local farmers and sells it in the markets of Alès, Avignon, and Marseille. It is honest work, respectable work, the kind of work that keeps a family fed and a roof over their heads. But Jean is more than a grain merchant. He is also a notary, a legal professional who drafts contracts, witnesses agreements, and keeps the records of the town. This is unusual for a Jewish convert. Most conversos are pushed to the margins of society, forced into trades that keep them away from power. But Jean has managed to build a life that looks, from the outside, like any other Christian merchant's life. The question is, what does it look like from the inside? We do not know for certain whether the Nostradamus family continued to practice Judaism in secret. Historians debate this. Some believe they were sincere Christians, that the conversion was genuine, that they left their old faith behind completely. Others point to the evidence: the family's connections to Jewish scholars, their knowledge of Hebrew and Kabbalah, their eventual return to Jewish identity in later generations. The truth is probably somewhere in between. What we do know is this: Michel grows up in a house where two worlds exist simultaneously. The world of the church, of Christian prayer, of Latin masses, and the world of his grandfathers. Michel's paternal grandfather, also named Jean, is a physician, a doctor. In the 16th century, this is not a casual profession. To be a doctor means years of study, mastery of Latin, Greek, and Arabic texts, and a deep understanding of the human body. John the Elder has studied at the great medical schools of Europe. He has read Galen and Hippocrates. He has treated plague victims. He has delivered babies and set broken bones. And he has done all of this while carrying a secret. Because John the Elder is also a scholar of Jewish mysticism, what we now call Kabbalah. He knows the Hebrew alphabet not just as letters, but as divine symbols. He understands the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, which describes how God spoke the universe into existence using the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. He knows that numbers are not just numbers, they are the language of God. And he teaches all of this to his grandson. Michel's maternal grandfather, Jean de Saint-Remy, is equally extraordinary. He is an astrologer. In the 16th century, astrology is not a hobby or a superstition. It is a science. Kings employ astrologers. Popes consult them. Universities teach it. To study the stars is to study the mind of God. Jean de Saint-Remy has spent his life mapping the heavens. He knows the positions of the planets, the movements of the constellations, the cycles of eclipses. He has calculated birth charts for the nobility of Provence. And he has passed this knowledge down to his daughter, Rainier, and now to his grandson. So Michel grows up in a house where three traditions meet: medicine, astrology, and Jewish mysticism. Three traditions that the Christian world officially rejects. Three traditions that will form the foundation of everything he will become. Imagine being that boy. You are 6 years old. It is midnight. Your grandfather takes you outside into the garden. The air is cool and smells of rosemary. Above you, the sky is not the pale, washed-out sky of modern cities. It is a river of stars, so dense and bright that it seems to pour down from heaven itself. Your grandfather points to a cluster of stars. He tells you their names. He tells you the stories the Greeks told about them. Orion the hunter, Cassiopeia the queen, Andromeda chained to her rock. He tells you how the Egyptians saw them differently, how the Babylonians used them to predict the flooding of the Nile. And then he tells you something else. He tells you that the stars are not just lights in the sky. They are messages. They are a language. They are the handwriting of God. And if you learn to read them, you can read the future. You are 6 years old, and you are being told that the universe is not random. That everything, every birth, every death, every war, every plague, is written in advance, inscribed in the movements of the heavens, waiting for someone with the courage and the knowledge to decipher it. How does that change a child? How does that shape a mind? Michel is an unusual child. He is quiet, observant. He does not play with the other children in the street. He prefers to sit in his grandfather's study, surrounded by books he cannot yet read, breathing in the smell of old paper and dried ink. He learns Latin before he learns the local Provençal dialect. He learns Greek before he learns French. He learns Hebrew in secret, at night, when the house is asleep, because Hebrew is the language of the Jews, and Jews are forbidden. By the age of 8, he can read medical texts in 3 languages. By the age of 10, he can calculate the positions of the planets. By the age of 12, he knows more about the human body than most adults in his town. And he is lonely. Being gifted is not a gift. Not when you are a child. Not when the other children look at you like you are a freak. Not when your parents worry that your intelligence will draw attention, the wrong kind of attention. Not when you know things you are not supposed to know, see things you are not supposed to see, feel things you are not supposed to feel. Michel does not have friends. He has books. He does not have games. He has the night sky. He does not have a childhood in the normal sense. He has a mission, planted in him by his grandfathers, watered by his own curiosity, growing like a vine around his heart. The mission is simple: understand everything. And the everything he wants to understand is not the everything of ordinary life. It is not how to plant wheat or shoe a horse or bake bread. It is the everything of existence. Why are we here? What happens after death? Can the future be known? Is there a pattern to history, a design to suffering, a meaning to the chaos? These are not questions a child should be asking. But Michel is not an ordinary child. And the world he lives in is not an ordinary world. In 1503, the Catholic Church is the most powerful institution in Europe. It controls education, medicine, law, and the calendar itself. It decides what is true and what is false, what is permitted and what is forbidden, who is saved and who is damned. And the Church has a very clear position on the questions Michel is asking. The future cannot be known. Only God knows the future. Any human who claims to know the future is either a fraud or a heretic. Astrology is tolerated, barely, as long as it does not claim to predict specific events. Medicine is permitted, grudgingly, as long as it does not challenge the Church's authority over the body. Jewish mysticism is absolutely forbidden, punishable by death. So Michel is being raised in a house where the most important things he is learning are also the most dangerous things he could know. His grandfathers are not just teaching him, they are arming him for a war he does not yet understand. And then, when Michel is somewhere between 9 and 11 years old, something happens that will change everything. His grandfather Jaume, the physician, the Kabbalist, the keeper of secrets, dies. We do not know the exact year. We do not know the exact cause. We know only that the old man is gone, and with him goes the living library of knowledge that has been Michel's entire world. Imagine losing your teacher, your mentor, your guide to the universe before you are old enough to fully understand what he has taught you. Imagine the panic, the desperation, the fear that everything you have learned will be lost, that the books will be burned, that the secrets will die with him. But Jaume has prepared for this. He has written everything down. He has left his grandson a library, not just books, but a system of thought, a way of seeing the world, a method for reading the signs that others miss. And he has left him something else. A name. Not the name he was born with, not the name on his baptismal certificate, but a name that connects him to a lineage of scholars and mystics that stretches back to the ancient world. A name that says, you are not alone. You are part of something larger than yourself. You are the inheritor of a tradition that has survived every empire, every persecution, every attempt to destroy it. The name is Nostradamus, and it will become the most famous name in the history of prophecy. But before that name can mean anything, the boy must become a man. And the path from boy to man, in 16th century France, runs through the university. There is only one problem. The university is closed, and the plague is coming. Michel de Nostradamus is 15 years old when he leaves Saint-Rémy-de-Provence for the first time. He is not running away. He is not escaping. He is doing what every gifted young man in Europe does. He is going to university. His destination is Avignon, not the Avignon of tourist brochures and papal palaces, but the Avignon of 1519, a city still recovering from the Great Schism, still marked by the presence of the papal court that had made it, for a brief moment, the center of the Christian world. Avignon is 40 miles from Saint-Rémy. On foot, It takes 2 days. On a donkey, it takes 1. Michel walks, because his family does not own a donkey, and because walking gives him time to think. He is thinking about the stars. He has spent the last 3 years, since his grandfather's death, studying everything he can get his hands on. He has read the medical texts his grandfather left behind. He has copied astrological charts by candlelight. He has taught himself enough mathematics to calculate the movements of the planets. And he has done all of this in secret. Because in 1519, a boy from a converso family does not announce his ambitions. He does not tell the world that he wants to be a doctor, an astrologer, a scholar. He keeps his head down. He works hard. He hopes that his talent will be enough to overcome his origins. Avignon is a city of contradictions. It is a holy city, the seat of the papacy for nearly 70 years in the 14th century, and still a place of immense religious importance. It is also a city of sin, of brothels and gambling dens, of merchants who sell indulgences and priests who buy them, of every kind of corruption that power attracts. And it is a city of learning. The University of Avignon is not as famous as the University of Paris or the medical school of Salerno in Italy, but it is good enough. It has professors who know their subjects. It has a library with books that Michel has never seen before. It has students from all over Europe, Italians, Germans, Spaniards, even a few Englishmen who have somehow made their way across the channel. Michel enrolls as a student of the liberal arts. This is the standard first step for anyone who wants to become a doctor. The liberal arts, grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, are the foundation upon which all higher learning is built. And astronomy, in 1519, is not what we think of today. It is astrology. In the 16th century, the line between astronomy and astrology does not exist in the way it does for us. To study the stars is to study fate. The positions of the planets at the moment of your birth determine your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses, your destiny. The movements of the heavens predict the rise and fall of kings, the outcomes of wars, the coming of plagues. This is not superstition. This is science. And Michel is very, very good at it. His professors notice him immediately. He is younger than most of the other students, but he knows more. He can calculate an ephemeris, a table of planetary positions, faster than anyone in his class. He can interpret a birth chart with a precision that amazes his teachers. He speaks Latin fluently, Greek competently, and Hebrew, when he lets it slip, with an accent that suggests he learned it from someone who learned it from someone who spoke it as a native tongue. He is, by every measure, a prodigy, and he is, by every measure, in danger. Because Avignon is not just a university town. It is also an Inquisition town. The papal court may have left, but the Inquisition remains. And the Inquisition is always watching, always listening, always waiting for someone to say the wrong thing, read the wrong book, worship the wrong God. Michel knows this. He has known it since he was old enough to understand what his family was. He has been trained by his parents, by his grandfathers, by the very air he breathes, to be careful, to be silent, to never reveal more than necessary. But talent is hard to hide, and ambition is even harder. Michel does not just want to study. He wants to practice. He wants to heal. He wants to use the knowledge his grandfathers gave him to help people. Real people, suffering people, people who are dying of diseases that the church says are punishments from God. And the disease that is about to descend upon Europe will give him his chance. It will also nearly destroy him. The plague. It has many names: the Black Death, the Great Mortality, the Pestilence. It first arrived in Europe in 1347, carried by fleas on rats aboard ships from the Crimea. In 5 years, it killed between 30 and 60% of Europe's population. It destroyed economies, shattered faiths, remade the social order. And it never really left. Every few decades, the plague returns. It sweeps through cities and towns, killing indiscriminately, rich and poor, young and old, saint and sinner. No one knows why it comes. No one knows why it goes. The doctors are helpless. The priests are helpless. The kings are helpless. In 1520, the year after Michel arrives in Avignon, the plague comes again. The university closes. This is standard procedure. When the plague arrives, everything stops. Markets close. Churches empty. Schools shut their doors. The wealthy flee to their country estates. The poor are left to die in the streets. Michel does not flee. He stays. And he does something that will define the rest of his life. He goes to work. Michel is not yet a doctor. He does not have a degree. He does not have the authority to practice medicine. But he has knowledge of herbs, of hygiene, of the human body, that most doctors do not have. He knows that the plague is not a punishment from God. It is a disease. It spreads through contact. It can be prevented, or at least mitigated, by cleanliness, by isolation, by the right combination of medicines. He knows this because his grandfather taught him. And he knows something else. He knows that the doctors who are supposed to be treating the plague are making it worse. In 1520, the standard medical treatment for the plague is bloodletting. The theory, derived from the ancient Greek physician Galen, is that disease is caused by an imbalance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. To restore balance, you must remove the excess humor. So you cut the patient and let the blood flow. It does not work. It has never worked. It makes things worse, weakening patients who are already weak, spreading infection through contaminated instruments, killing people who might otherwise have survived. Michel knows this. He has read the texts that prove it. He has seen the results with his own eyes. And he refuses to do it. Instead, he develops his own treatments. He creates what will later be called the rose pill, a combination of rose petals, sawdust from green cypress, iris, cloves, calamus, and aloe. He recommends cleanliness, washing hands, boiling water, burning contaminated clothing. He isolates the sick from the healthy. He treats the symptoms, the fever, the buboes, the delirium, with herbal remedies that actually work. And he saves lives. Not all of them. The plague is too powerful, too random, too cruel for any doctor to defeat completely. But Michel saves more than the average doctor. Significantly more. Word spreads. People start coming to him. Not just the poor, who have no other choice, but the wealthy, the educated, the powerful. They come in secret, at night, because they do not want to admit that they are consulting a student, a Jew, a nobody. But they come. And Michel treats them. All of them. For months, Michel works without rest. He sleeps in his clothes. He eats whatever is brought to him. He treats hundreds of patients, maybe thousands. He watches some recover. He watches many die. He holds the hands of the dying. He comforts the bereaved. He buries the dead. And something happens to him during those months. Something that will shape everything he does for the rest of his life. He sees the limits of knowledge. He sees that all his books, all his charts, all his herbs are not enough. That there are forces in the world, disease, death, fate, that cannot be controlled by human will or human wisdom. He sees that the universe is not a machine that can be fixed. It is a mystery that can only be witnessed. And he sees something else. He sees patterns. In the midst of the chaos, in the middle of the dying, Michel starts to notice something. The plague does not strike randomly. It follows patterns. It arrives in certain years, under certain astrological conditions. It affects certain people more than others. It moves in waves, like the tides, like the seasons, like the movements of the planets. This is not a new idea. Astrologers have been saying for centuries that the stars influence disease. But Michel is seeing it with his own eyes. He is watching the plague unfold in real time, and he is matching its progress to the positions of the planets. And the match is too close to be coincidence. He starts to keep notes, secret notes, in a code that only he understands. He records the dates of deaths, the symptoms, the astrological conditions. He looks for correlations. He looks for predictions, and he finds them. This is the moment when the doctor starts to become the prophet, not because he wants to be a prophet, not because he has any interest in fame or fortune or power, but because he cannot help himself, because the pattern is there, and he can see it, and once you see a pattern, you cannot unsee it. The plague teaches Michel de Nostradamus the most important lesson of his life. Everything is connected. The stars and the body, the past and the future, the individual and the cosmos, the microcosm and the macrocosm. And if everything is connected, then everything can be predicted. Not with certainty, not with precision, but with enough accuracy to matter. Enough to save lives. Enough to warn the innocent. Enough to change the course of history. This is the idea that will consume Michel for the next 40 years. This is the idea that will make him famous. And this is the idea that will nearly destroy him. By 1521, the plague has burned itself out. Avignon is recovering. The university reopens. Life returns to something like normal. But Michel does not return to the university. He has learned something in the plague years that no university can teach. He has learned that medicine is not just a science. It is a calling. And he has learned that his calling is not in lecture halls or libraries, but in the world, in the streets, in the sick rooms, in the places where people are suffering and dying and desperate for help. So he leaves Avignon. Not to go home. He is not ready for that. Not to go to another university. He has had enough of classrooms. He leaves to wander, to travel, to learn from the world itself. He will spend the next 8 years on the road, and those 8 years will change everything. But before we follow him, we must understand something. Michel is not just a wandering student. He is a young man with a secret that could get him killed. A secret that he carries with him every step of the way, every mile of the road, every night, in every strange bed. He is Jewish. Or rather, he is from a Jewish family. Whether he himself practices Judaism is unclear. Whether he believes in the Christian faith he was baptized into is unclear. What is clear is that his ancestry is a liability, a danger, a sword hanging over his head. And in 1521, that sword is about to fall on someone very close to him. But that is a story for the next chapter. For now, Michel de Nostradamus, 19 years old, plague survivor, aspiring doctor, secret Jew, stargazer, and dreamer, walks out of Avignon and into the unknown. He has no map. He has no plan. He has only his knowledge, his curiosity, and a burning question that will not let him rest. What else can I see? Michel de Nostradamus does not keep a diary during his wandering years. We have no letters, no journals, no first-hand accounts of where he went or what he did between 1521 and 1529. But we can reconstruct his journey from the knowledge he later displays, the languages he speaks, the herbs he uses, the medical techniques he employs, and from the geography of the region itself. He heads south, toward the Mediterranean, toward the ports and trading cities where ideas flow as freely as goods, toward the places where a young man with knowledge can find work, find teachers, find himself. Marseille is the largest port in France. It has been a trading hub for 2,000 years, since the Greeks founded it in 600 BC. It is a city of sailors, merchants, and immigrants, of Greeks, Italians, North Africans, and Levantines, of Christians, Muslims, and Jews who have somehow managed to coexist in a way that would be impossible anywhere else in France. For Michel, Marseille is a revelation. He has spent his life in a small town, hiding his identity, watching his words, fearing the knock at the door. In Marseille, no one cares where you came from. No one asks about your grandparents' religion. What matters is what you can do, what you know, what you can sell. And Michel can sell medicine. He sets himself up as an apothecary, a preparer and seller of medicines. This is not the same as being a doctor. An apothecary does not diagnose or prescribe. He mixes the ingredients that doctors order. He creates the pills, the potions, the ointments that heal the sick. But in practice, the line is blurry, especially in a port city where doctors are scarce and expensive. People come to Michel with their symptoms. They describe their fevers, their pains, their rashes. And Michel, who has treated plague victims, who has studied under his physician grandfather, who has read more medical texts than most licensed doctors, gives them advice. He tells them what to eat, what to avoid, what herbs to take, how to prepare them. He charges a small fee, enough to live on, not enough to get rich. And slowly, carefully, he builds a reputation, not as a prophet, not yet, as a healer. But Marseille is not just a place to work. It is a place to learn. In the port, Michel meets sailors from all over the world. They bring stories, medicines, and ideas from places he has only read about. They tell him about the Arab doctors of North Africa, who have developed treatments for diseases that European doctors cannot even name. They tell him about the Jewish physicians of Constantinople, who have preserved the medical knowledge of the ancient Greeks while Europe was burning in the Dark Ages. They tell him about the mystery schools of Egypt, where initiates learn to read the future in the stars and the entrails of animals. Michel listens. He asks questions. He trades his medicines for their stories. And he starts to build a network of people who know things, who have seen things, who can teach him what the universities cannot. From Marseille, Michel travels along the coast, to Toulon, to Nice, to Genoa, across the border in Italy. Each city teaches him something new. Each city adds a piece to the puzzle he is assembling in his mind. In Genoa, he learns about maritime astrology, the art of predicting weather and navigation conditions from the stars. This is practical knowledge, used by ship captains to decide when to sail and when to stay in port. But it is also a form of prophecy. It is the application of astrological principles to real-world events. In Nice, he meets Jewish merchants who have fled the Spanish Inquisition. They tell him about Kabbalah, not the watered-down version his grandfather taught him, but the deep, dangerous, transformative mysticism of the Zohar and the Sefer Yetzirah. They tell him about gematria, the practice of finding hidden meanings in words by converting their letters into numbers. They tell him about the Shum Hamphorask, the secret name of God, which contains within it the power to create and destroy worlds. Michel is fascinated and terrified because this is not the safe, academic astrology he studied in Avignon. This is something else, something older, something darker, something that whispers to him in the night, that calls to him from the pages of forbidden books, that promises to show him what no human being is supposed to see. The future. We do not know exactly when Michel first attempts to predict the future. We do not know what method he uses, whether it is astrology, or scrying, or meditation, or some combination of all three. We know only that, by the time he is in his mid-20s, he has developed a practice, a ritual, a way of opening himself to visions, and it terrifies him. Here is what we know about Michel's method, based on later accounts and the techniques described in his writings. He uses a brass tripod. He fills a bowl with water. He places the bowl on the tripod and stares into the water. He meditates. He empties his mind. He waits. And then, sometimes, he sees things. Not things that are there. Things that will be there. Events that have not happened yet. People who have not been born. Wars that have not been fought. Cities that have not been built. He does not understand how it works. He does not claim to understand. He only knows that it works, sometimes unpredictably, terrifyingly. And he does not tell anyone, because to tell anyone would be to admit that he is doing something forbidden, something heretical, something that the Inquisition would burn him for. So he keeps it secret. He writes his visions down in a private notebook, in a code that only he can read. He hides the notebook. He tells himself that he is not a prophet, only a curious man, a scientist, a doctor who is exploring the limits of human perception. But he knows the truth. He knows that something is happening to him. Something that started in the plague years, when he first saw the patterns in the chaos. Something that has grown stronger with every year, every vision, every prediction that came true. He is becoming something else. Something that does not have a name in any language he knows. And then, in 1529, after 8 years on the road, Michel makes a decision. He is 25 years old. He has traveled hundreds of miles. He has learned more than most men learn in a lifetime. He has treated the sick, studied the stars, and glimpsed the future. But he is still not a doctor. And without a medical degree, he will always be an outsider, always on the margins, always one step away from respectability, from security, from the life he wants. So he decides to go back to school. Not to Avignon. The university there is too small, too provincial, too close to home. He chooses the most famous medical school in France. The school where the best doctors in Europe have trained. The school that will give him the credentials he needs to practice medicine legally, openly, without fear. He chooses Montpellier. Montpellier is the Harvard Medical School of the 16th century. It has been teaching medicine since 1289. Its professors are the most respected in Europe. Its graduates become the personal physicians to kings and queens. And it has a reputation for tolerance. Unlike the University of Paris, which is rigidly Catholic and deeply suspicious of anything that smacks of heresy, Montpellier has a long history of accepting Jewish students. Not openly, that would be impossible, but quietly, discreetly. As long as you do not make waves, as long as you do not draw attention to yourself, as long as you are brilliant enough to be worth the risk. Michel is brilliant enough. He enrolls in 1529 at the age of 25. He is older than most of the other students, but he is also more experienced. He has treated real patients. He has faced real diseases. He knows more about practical medicine than most of his professors. And he is about to discover that knowing too much can be just as dangerous as knowing too little. The University of Montpellier is not what Michel expected. He arrives with the confidence of a man who has spent 8 years in the real world, treating real patients, saving real lives. He expects to be recognized as an equal. He expects his professors to be impressed by his knowledge, his experience, his skill. He is wrong. The professors of Montpellier are not interested in experience. They are interested in authority. They teach the medicine of Galen and Hippocrates, ancient Greek physicians who lived 1,000 years before Christ, and they expect their students to memorize it, repeat it, and never question it. Galen believed that the human body was governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Disease was caused by an imbalance of these humors. Treatment consisted of restoring balance through bloodletting, purging, vomiting, and the application of leeches. This is the medicine that Michel's grandfather rejected. The medicine that killed more plague victims than it saved. The medicine that Michel knows, from first-hand experience, does not work. And now he is expected to learn it, to believe it, to practice it. Michel tries. He really does. He sits in lectures. He takes notes. He memorizes the texts. But he cannot keep his mouth shut. When a professor teaches that bloodletting cures fever, Michel raises his hand and asks, "Then why do so many patients die after being bled?" When a professor teaches that the plague is caused by bad air, Michel asks, "Then why do some people survive while others die, even when they breathe the same air?" When a professor teaches that astrology has no place in medicine, Michel asks, "Then why do the symptoms of disease change with the seasons, with the phases of the moon, with the positions of the planets?" The professors do not like these questions. They do not like Michel. Michel is not expelled, not yet, but he is marginalized, excluded from study groups, ignored in class, mocked by students who have never treated a patient in their lives, but who know how to repeat the correct answers. And then, he is accused of being an apothecary. In the 16th century, there is a strict hierarchy in medicine, and below the apothecaries are the barbers, the midwives, the herbalists, the quacks, the charlatans, anyone who practices medicine without formal training. Michel has worked as an apothecary. He has mixed medicines. He has sold remedies. He has done the work that physicians consider beneath them. And now, at Montpellier, his past has caught up with him. A fellow student, or perhaps a professor, the records are unclear, accuses him of continuing to work as an apothecary while studying to be a physician. This is forbidden. The university code explicitly states that no one who has practiced a manual trade can become a physician. The reasoning is that manual labor corrupts the mind, making it unfit for the theoretical work of medicine. It is a class rule, disguised as a professional standard, and it is designed to keep people like Michel out. Michel defends himself. He argues that his work as an apothecary was not manual labor, but intellectual labor, that mixing medicines requires knowledge of chemistry, botany, and pharmacology. He argues that his experience makes him a better doctor, not a worse one. He argues that the university's rules are outdated, elitist, and harmful to patients. He loses. In 1530, after less than a year at Montpellier, Michel de Nostradamus is expelled, or rather, he is invited to leave. The official records are vague. There is no dramatic scene, no public humiliation, no burning of books. Just a quiet conversation with the dean, a suggestion that he might be happier elsewhere, a letter of dismissal that says nothing about the real reason. The real reason is that Michel de Nostradamus is too dangerous, too knowledgeable, too experienced, too willing to challenge authority, too Jewish, perhaps, though no one says this out loud. He is an outsider, and outsiders are not welcome at Montpellier. Michel leaves Montpellier in 1530. He is 26 years old. He has no degree, no credentials, no future in the world of academic medicine. But he has something else. He has 8 years of practical experience. He has a network of contacts across the Mediterranean. He has knowledge that no university can teach. And he has a reputation, small but growing, as a healer who can do what other doctors cannot. He also has a new skill. During his time at Montpellier, he has continued to study astrology. He has learned to cast horoscopes, detailed astrological charts that map the positions of the planets at the moment of a person's birth and predict their character, their destiny, their future. And he has discovered that he is very, very good at it. Horoscopes are not just fortune-telling. In the 16th century, they are a serious business. Kings and queens employ court astrologers. Generals consult them before battles. Merchants use them to choose the best days for trading. Even the Catholic Church, which officially condemns astrology as heresy, employs astrologers in secret. Michel's horoscopes are different from the standard ones. They are more detailed, more precise, more accurate. He does not just predict general trends. You will have a successful career, or you will face a challenge in love. He predicts specific events, specific dates, specific outcomes, and he is right. More often than not, his predictions come true. Word spreads, not widely. Michel is careful to keep his astrological work separate from his medical work to avoid accusations of witchcraft. But among the educated elite of southern France, among the merchants and minor nobility who value practical knowledge over academic credentials, Michel de Nostradamus becomes known as someone who can see what others cannot. And in 1531, this reputation brings him an opportunity. A wealthy patron, a man who can change his life. His name is Julius Caesar Scaliger, and he is the most famous scholar in Europe. Julius Caesar Scaliger is not a modest man. He claims to be descended from the noble Scaliger family of Verona, the same family that produced the medieval poet Dante's patron. He claims to have served as a soldier in the armies of the Holy Roman Emperor. He claims to have studied under the greatest minds of Italy, Germany, and France. Some of these claims are true. Some are exaggerated. All of them serve to create an image. Scaliger is a genius, a polymath, a man of vast learning and even vaster ego. And in 1531, he is looking for a doctor. Scaliger lives in Agen, a small town in the south of France, not far from Montpellier. He has chosen Agen because it is quiet, cheap, and far from the academic politics of the universities. He has built a library that rivals those of the great monasteries. He has gathered around him a circle of students and admirers who hang on his every word. And he is sick. We do not know exactly what ails him. Gout, perhaps, the painful swelling of the joints that afflicts so many wealthy men of the era, or some chronic condition that the doctors of Agen cannot diagnose. Whatever it is painful enough to make him seek help from outside the town. He hears about Michel de Nostradamus, a young doctor, not officially licensed, but experienced, a man who has treated plague victims, a man who knows astrology, a man who, according to rumor, can see the future. Scaliger is skeptical. He is skeptical of everything, but he is also desperate, and curiosity has always been his weakness. He sends for Michel. Michel arrives in Agen in 1531. He is 27 years old. He has no degree, no official position, no reputation beyond the whispers of merchants and astrologers. And he is about to meet the most intimidating man he has ever encountered. Scaliger is 55 years old enough to be Michel's father, young enough to still be formidable. He is tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that has been hardened by years of soldiering and scholarship. He speaks 6 languages. He has written books on botany, philosophy, and literary criticism that are read across Europe. And he does not suffer fools. The first meeting does not go well. Scaliger tests Michel. He asks him questions about Galen, about Hippocrates, about Arabic medicine. He asks him to explain the theory of the 4 humors. He asks him to diagnose an imaginary patient. Michel answers honestly. Too honestly. He tells Scaliger that he does not believe in the 4 humors, that he thinks bloodletting is dangerous, that he believes astrology has a legitimate place in medicine. Scaliger is shocked. No one has ever spoken to him this way. His students agree with everything he says. His colleagues flatter him. His enemies ignore him. But this young man, this nobody from Provence, is arguing with him, defying him, telling him that everything he believes about medicine is wrong. Scaliger should throw him out. Instead, he hires him. Why? Because Scaliger, for all his arrogance, is a genuine scholar. He values truth above comfort. He has spent his life seeking knowledge, and he recognizes in Michel a kindred spirit, someone who is not afraid to challenge authority, who is willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads, who cares more about healing than about reputation. Also, Michel's treatments work. Within weeks, Scaliger's condition improves. The pain in his joints diminishes. His energy returns. He can walk without assistance. He can write without stopping every few minutes to massage his hands. He is impressed. An impressed Scaliger is generous Scaliger. He offers Michel a position, not just as a doctor, but as a member of his household. A place to live, food, access to his library, the greatest private library in France, introductions to his friends, poets, philosophers, scientists, nobles, and, most importantly, legitimacy. For the first time in his life, Michel is accepted. He is not an outsider. He is not a wandering apothecary. He is the personal physician to Julius Caesar Scaliger, the most respected scholar in Europe. He moves into Scaliger's house. He eats at his table. He debates philosophy with his guests. He falls in love with the life of the mind, the life he always wanted, the life his grandfathers prepared him for, the life that seemed impossible for a boy from a Jewish family in a small town in Provence. And then, something even better happens. He falls in love. Her name is Henriette d'Encausse. Or perhaps it is something else. The records are unclear. Some sources say her name was Henriette. Others say it was a different name. What is clear is that she is from a good family. Not noble, but respectable. That she is beautiful. That she is intelligent. And that she loves Michel. They marry in 1532 or 1533. The exact date is uncertain. What is certain is that Michel, for the first time in his life, is happy. Truly, completely, uncomplicatedly happy. He has a home, a wife, a patron who respects him, a circle of friends who value his mind. He has access to books that most scholars can only dream of. He has time to study, to think, to write. And he has something else. He has a family. Henriette gives birth to a child, perhaps 2 children. The records are confused. Michel becomes a father. He holds his child in his arms. He looks into its eyes and sees the future, not in a mystical vision, but in the ordinary, miraculous way that all parents do. He sees a life stretching ahead, his child's life, his own life, extended through this new being. He sees graduations, marriages, grandchildren. He sees himself growing old, surrounded by family, respected, loved, secure. He sees, for the first time, the possibility of a normal life. And then, in 1534, everything ends. The plague returns. Not the Great Plague of 1347, but a localized outbreak. A few cases in Agen, then a few more, then a dozen, then 100. The town panics. The gates are closed. No one enters. No one leaves. The healthy flee to the countryside. The sick are left behind, locked in their houses, left to die alone. Michel does not flee. He stays. He treats the sick. He risks his life, day after day, walking into houses that reek of death, holding the hands of the dying, mixing his rose pills, applying his herbal remedies, doing everything he can to save the people of Agen. And he fails. Henriette dies. We do not know the exact date. We do not know the exact circumstances. We know only that she is gone, and with her goes the child, or children, she and Michel brought into the world. Michel is 31 years old, and he has lost everything. The house is silent. The library is closed. Scaliger has fled to the countryside, taking his family with him. The friends have disappeared. The town is a ghost town, filled with the dead and the dying. Michel sits in the dark. He does not eat. He does not sleep. He does not cry, not at first. He just sits, staring at the wall, trying to understand what has happened. He is a doctor. He has saved hundreds of lives. He has faced the plague before and won. He has knowledge, skill, experience. He has done everything right. And his wife is dead. His child is dead. Everything he loved is dead. And then the questions come. The questions that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Why her? Why them? Why not me? If I can see the future, why could I not see this? If God is just, why does he allow this? If the stars determine our fate, what is the point of trying? Michel has spent his life believing that the universe is ordered, that everything happens for a reason, that knowledge is power and power can protect us from suffering. Now he knows the truth. Knowledge is not power. The stars do not care. God, if he exists, is silent. And the plague does not discriminate between the worthy and the unworthy, the good and the bad, the innocent and the guilty. It takes everyone. Michel stays in Agen for a while longer. He treats the remaining patients. He buries the dead. He tries to rebuild his life. But the life he had is gone. The house is empty. The laughter is gone. The future he imagined, the normal, happy, human future, has been destroyed. And something else has been destroyed too. His faith. Not his religious faith, that was always complicated, always hidden, always uncertain, but his faith in the order of things. His belief that the universe makes sense, that suffering has meaning, that knowledge leads to wisdom, and wisdom leads to peace. He no longer believes these things. And in the absence of belief, something else grows. Something dark, something cold, something that looks at the world and sees not a pattern of divine order, but a chaos of meaningless suffering. And from that darkness, a new purpose emerges. If the universe is chaos, then someone must impose order upon it. If God is silent, then someone must speak. If the future is darkness, then someone must light a candle. Michel de Nostradamus decides to become that someone. He decides to see the future, not because he wants to, not because he enjoys it, but because he has to. Because the alternative, living in a world of random cruelty, where the people you love can be taken from you at any moment for no reason, is unbearable. He will see the future. He will write it down. He will warn the world. And maybe, just maybe, he will prevent another tragedy like the one that has destroyed his life. But before he can do any of this, he must survive. And survival, in 1534, is not guaranteed. Agen is a graveyard. Not literally. The plague has passed. The survivors have returned. The markets have reopened. But for Michel de Nostradamus, Agen is a place of ghosts. Every street corner reminds him of Henriette. Every child he sees is a knife in his heart. Every sunrise is an accusation. You are still alive, and she is not. He cannot stay. But he cannot go home. So he wanders. For the next 4 years, 1534 to 1538, Michel de Nostradamus disappears from the historical record. We do not know where he goes. We do not know what he does. We have only fragments, rumors, and the knowledge he displays when he reappears. But we can reconstruct his journey. He heads east, toward Italy, toward the centers of learning that his grandfather spoke of, toward the places where the knowledge of the ancient world has been preserved, not in universities, but in secret societies, in monasteries, in the homes of scholars who have dedicated their lives to keeping the flame alive. He travels through the Alps. He sees snow for the first time. Real snow, not the light dusting that occasionally falls on Provence, but the deep, endless white of mountain peaks. He crosses into Italy. He visits Venice, Florence, Rome. In Venice, he meets Jewish scholars who have fled the Inquisition. They teach him advanced Kabbalah, the mystical system that seeks to understand the nature of God through the study of numbers, letters, and symbols. They teach him about the tree of life, the 10 Sephiroth that connect the human soul to the divine. They teach him about the golem, the artificial man created by magic. They teach him about the practical Kabbalah, the use of divine names and angelic forces to influence the material world. In Florence, he meets Neoplatonist philosophers who believe that the material world is a shadow of a higher, spiritual reality. They teach him that the key to understanding the future is to understand the ideas, the eternal forms that shape all of history. They teach him that time is not a straight line, but a circle, that the past and the future are connected, that everything that will happen has already happened in the mind of God. In Rome, he meets astrologers who serve the papal court. They teach him the most advanced techniques of horoscopic astrology, the calculation of planetary positions, the interpretation of aspects and transits, the prediction of eclipses and comets. They teach him that the stars are not just lights in the sky, but living beings, intelligences, messengers from the divine. And somewhere along the way, he meets someone or something that changes him forever. We do not know who this person is. We do not know their name, their nationality, their religion. We know only that they teach Michel a method of divination that goes beyond astrology, a method of direct vision, of seeing the future not through calculation, but through intuition, through trance, through contact with a higher power. Some historians believe this person was a Jewish mystic, a master of Kabbalah who had achieved the highest level of spiritual attainment. Others believe it was a Sufi mystic from the Ottoman Empire, traveling through Italy in disguise. Still others believe it was a fictional figure, invented by Michel to explain abilities he could not otherwise account for. Whoever they were, they gave Michel a gift and a curse. The gift was the ability to see the future more clearly than ever before. Not just general trends, not just astrological probabilities, but specific events, specific people, specific dates. The curse was the knowledge that came with it. The knowledge that the future is fixed, that free will is an illusion, that everything, every birth, every death, every war, every plague, is already written, already determined, already inevitable. Michel has spent his life believing that knowledge is power, that if you can see the future, you can change it, that the purpose of prophecy is to warn, to prevent, to save. Now he knows the truth. The future cannot be changed. It can only be witnessed, and the witness pays a terrible price. Michel returns to France in 1538. He is 34 years old. He has been gone for 4 years. He has traveled thousands of miles. He has learned more than most men learn in 10 lifetimes. And he is broken. Not physically. He is healthy, strong, capable, but spiritually, emotionally. He has seen things that no human being should see. He knows things that no human being should know. He carries a burden that grows heavier with every passing day. He settles in Agen again. Scaliger is still there, still alive, still brilliant and arrogant. He takes Michel back into his household. He offers him the same position, doctor, companion, intellectual sparring partner. But things are different now. Michel is different. He is no longer the eager young man who argued with his professors. He is no longer the hopeful husband who dreamed of a normal life. He is something else, something harder, something colder, something that looks at the world with eyes that have seen too much. And Scaliger notices. The relationship deteriorates. We do not know exactly why. Perhaps Scaliger is jealous of Michel's growing reputation as an astrologer. Perhaps Michel's grief has made him bitter and difficult to live with. Perhaps they simply grew apart, two strong personalities, two brilliant minds, unable to share the same space. Whatever the reason, by 1538, the friendship is over. Michel leaves Agen for the last time. He will never see Scaliger again. And then, something happens that should have destroyed him completely. He is arrested. The charge is heresy, not against the Catholic Church. The Inquisition has not caught up with him yet. The charge is brought by the local authorities of Agen, who accuse Michel of making defamatory statements about the Church and its practices. What did he say? We do not know for certain. The records of the trial have not survived. But based on what we know of Michel's beliefs and the accusations commonly brought against conversos in this period, we can reconstruct the likely charges. He was accused of being a secret Jew, of practicing Judaism in private while pretending to be a Christian in public, of denying the divinity of Jesus, of observing the Jewish Sabbath, of eating kosher food, of praying in Hebrew, of teaching Jewish mysticism to his students, of using Kabbalistic magic to predict the future, of consorting with demons. Visual, a prisoner standing before a judge. Silent, defiant. These were standard accusations against conversos in 16th century France. They were rarely based on evidence. They were usually brought by enemies, rivals, or informers seeking reward, and they were almost impossible to disprove. If Michel was found guilty, the punishment would be severe. Imprisonment, at best. Torture and execution, at worst. He stands before the judge. He is 34 years old. He has lost his wife, his child, his patron, his home. He has traveled the world and returned with nothing but knowledge and grief. And now he is facing the possibility of death. What does he do? He defends himself, not with anger, not with defiance, with the one weapon he has always had, his mind. Michel argues that he is a loyal Christian, that he has never denied the faith, that he has never practiced Judaism, that he has never consorted with demons or used magic. He argues that his astrological work is not divination but science, the same science practiced by the Church's own scholars. He argues that his medical work has saved lives, including the lives of Christians. He argues that he has never harmed anyone, never broken any law, never done anything to deserve punishment. And he is believed, or rather, he is found not guilty. The charges are dismissed. The case is closed. Michel walks free. But he is not free. The trial has done something to him, something irreversible. It has shown him that his secret is not safe, that his identity, his real identity, the one he has spent his life hiding, is a vulnerability that can be exploited at any time. He is a marked man, not officially, not legally, but in the eyes of his neighbors, his colleagues, his enemies. He is now a heretic, a Jew, a suspicious character, someone to be watched, whispered about, avoided. He cannot stay in Agen. He cannot stay in the south of France. He must go somewhere new, somewhere no one knows him, somewhere he can start over. But where? He chooses to go north, to the heart of France, to the cities and towns where the wars of religion have not yet begun, where the Inquisition is less active, where a man with knowledge and skill can build a new life. He travels for months. He treats patients along the way, farmers with infected wounds, mothers with difficult births, children with fevers. He earns enough to eat, enough to sleep in inns, enough to keep moving. And he writes. Not the prophecies. Not yet. He is not ready for that. He writes medical texts, treatises on cosmetics, because in the 16th century, cosmetics are considered a branch of medicine, and wealthy women will pay well for recipes that keep them young and beautiful. Treatises on plague prevention, treatises on the preparation of medicines. He writes to survive, to establish himself, to build a reputation that is based on something other than astrology and prophecy. And slowly, carefully, he succeeds. By 1540, Michel has settled in a town called Salon de Provence. It is not far from his birthplace. He has not gone as far north as he planned, but it is far enough. No one here knows about the trial in Agen. No one here knows about his Jewish ancestry. No one here knows about his visions of the future. He is just the new doctor, the quiet man, the one who knows about herbs and stars. He opens a practice. He treats the sick. He delivers babies. He sets broken bones. He mixes his rose pills and his herbal remedies. He earns a modest living. And he waits. He waits for the right moment, the right place, the right person. He waits for the future to catch up with him. But the future does not come quietly. It comes with fire. The year is 1545, and France is burning. Not from war, not yet. The wars of religion will not officially begin for another 17 years. But the fire is already lit. The hatred is already growing. And in the south, where the Mediterranean sun bakes the stone walls of ancient cities, something terrible is about to happen. The plague has returned. But this is not the plague of 1520. This is not the localized outbreak that killed Henriette. This is something far worse. A pandemic that will sweep through the ports and cities of Provence like a scythe through wheat, killing tens of thousands, leaving entire towns empty, filling the streets with the stench of death. And Michel de Nostradamus, now 41 years old, still grieving, still wounded, still carrying the weight of everything he has lost, will face the greatest test of his life. Marseille is dying. The plague arrived in the spring of 1545, carried by a ship from the Levant. No one knows which ship. No one knows which sailor brought the infection. But within weeks, the disease is spread through the crowded neighborhoods near the port, the same neighborhoods where Michel once worked as an apothecary, where he first built his reputation, where he first dreamed of becoming a doctor. Now those streets are a nightmare. The hospitals are full. The churches are empty. The priests have fled, taking the sacraments with them. The wealthy have barricaded themselves in their country estates, leaving the poor to die in filthy tenements without medicine, without comfort, without hope. And the doctors? The doctors are dead, or fled, or hiding, except for two. Michel de Nostradamus and Louis Serra. Serra is a doctor from Marseille, a local man, respected, experienced, everything Michel is not. He has a medical degree from Montpellier. He has the official credentials that Michel lacks. He has the trust of the city fathers, the support of the church, the legitimacy that Michel has spent his life trying to earn. And he is terrified, because this plague is different. It is faster, deadlier, more contagious. The usual treatments, bloodletting, purging, the application of toads, are not just useless. They are making things worse. Serra has tried everything. He has bled patients until they fainted. He has given them emetics until they vomited blood. He has prayed over them, anointed them with holy oil, read them the last rites. And they have died anyway. All of them. He is losing hope. He is losing faith. He is starting to believe that this is not a disease but a punishment, that God has abandoned Marseille, that the end times have come, that there is nothing anyone can do. And then Michel arrives. Michel does not announce himself. He does not knock on the door of the city hall and demand to be put in charge. He simply appears in the hospitals, in the streets, in the houses where the sick lie dying, and he starts to work. He wears a long leather coat. He carries a staff to lean on. His joints are already beginning to ache with the gout that will plague him for the rest of his life. He smells of rosemary and vinegar, his own disinfectant, a mixture he has perfected over 20 years of treating plague victims. And he does something that no other doctor in Marseille is doing. He touches the patients. In 1545, doctors do not touch patients. They observe from a distance. They diagnose by looking at urine samples, the color, the smell, the sediment. They prescribe treatments based on theory, not on examination. They are philosophers of the body, not healers of the body. Michel is different. He takes the patient's hand. He feels their pulse, not just counting the beats, but feeling the quality, the strength, the rhythm. He places his ear against their chest and listens to their breathing. He examines the buboes, the swollen lymph nodes that are the hallmark of the plague, and he does something extraordinary. He lances them. He takes a sharp knife, sterilizes it in fire, and cuts open the buboes to drain the pus. This is not standard practice. It is considered dangerous, even barbaric. But Michel knows, from experience, from observation, from the Arabic medical texts his grandfather taught him to read, that the buboes are pockets of infection. If you drain them, clean them, and treat the wound with the right herbs, the patient has a chance. A small chance, but a chance. And in a plague where the alternative is certain death, a small chance is everything. Serra watches Michel work. At first, he is skeptical. This man has no degree, no official position. He is a wanderer, a quack, a Jew. Sarah has heard the rumors. He should not be allowed near the sick. He should be arrested, or at least expelled from the city. But Sarah is also desperate and curious, so he watches. He watches Michel lance a bubo. He watches the pus drain away. He watches Michel apply a poultice of rose petals, cloves, and aloe. He watches the patient, a young woman, already given up for dead, fall into a peaceful sleep. And the next morning, she is alive. Not cured, the plague does not work that way, but alive. Her fever has broken. Her breathing has steadied. She asks for water. Sarah has never seen this before. They become partners. Not officially. The city authorities would never approve a partnership between a licensed physician and an unlicensed apothecary. But in practice, they work together. Sarah provides the legitimacy, the access to hospitals, the protection from the authorities. Michel provides the knowledge, the skill, the treatments that actually work. They work 16 hours a day, 20 hours. They sleep in the hospitals, on piles of straw, surrounded by the dying and the dead. They eat whatever is brought to them, usually bread and wine, sometimes nothing at all. They stop counting the days. They stop counting the dead. And slowly, painfully, they turn the tide. By the autumn of 1545, the plague has burned itself out. Marseille has lost between 30 and 50% of its population, tens of thousands of people, maybe more. The city will never be the same. The streets are quieter. The churches are emptier. The harbor, once bustling with ships from every corner of the Mediterranean, is half deserted. But the city survives, and Michel de Nostradamus is now a legend. Not just in Marseille, not just in Provence. His name travels. It reaches Paris. It reaches the court of King Francis I. People speak of the doctor who touched the plague victims, who drained the buboes, who saved lives when all hope was lost. They speak of him as a miracle worker. And they speak of something else. They speak of his predictions. During the plague, Michel did more than treat patients. He watched. He observed. He recorded. He noted the dates of the worst outbreaks, the astrological conditions, the positions of the planets, the phases of the moon. He matched the progress of the disease to the movements of the heavens, and he found, again, as he had found in 1520, that the patterns were too precise to be coincidence. And he wrote them down, not in medical texts, not in treatises, in something else, something new. He wrote them in quatrains, 4-line verses, in a mixture of French, Latin, Greek, and Provençal. He wrote them in a code that only he could understand, using anagrams, abbreviations, and symbolic language drawn from astrology, Kabbalah, and classical mythology. He called them his prophecies, and he showed them to no one. Why? Because he is afraid. Afraid of the Inquisition. Afraid of being accused of witchcraft. Afraid of the fire. He has seen what happens to people who claim to know the future. He has seen the trials, the tortures, the burnings. He knows that the Catholic Church tolerates astrology only as long as it does not challenge its authority. The moment astrology becomes prophecy, the moment someone claims to see the future by divine revelation, it becomes heresy. And heresy is punishable by death. So he hides his notebooks. He buries them in the walls of his house. He tells no one. But the knowledge is there, growing, waiting, and it will not stay hidden forever. Michel leaves Marseille in late 1545. He is exhausted, physically and spiritually. He has treated thousands of patients. He has saved hundreds, maybe thousands of lives. He has also watched thousands die, more than he can count. more than he can bear. He needs rest. He needs peace. He needs a place where he can heal. He goes home. Not to Saint Remy. That is too close, too familiar, too full of memories. He goes to Salon de Provence, the town where he has been living for the past 5 years. The town where no one knows his past. The town where he can be anonymous. But anonymity is not what fate has in store for him. Her name is in Ponsard, and she is about to change everything. Salon de Provence is not Marseille. It is not a port city, teeming with sailors and merchants and immigrants. It is not a university town, buzzing with intellectual debate. It is a small provincial town of perhaps 4,000 people, surrounded by vineyards and wheat fields, dominated by a medieval castle and a Romanesque church. It is, by most standards, unremarkable. But for Michel de Nostradamus, it is perfect. It is far enough from the major cities to be safe from the Inquisition. It is close enough to the Mediterranean to stay connected to the world. It has a market, a church, a few shops, and enough sick people to keep a doctor busy. And in 1547, it has something else. It has a widow. And Ponsard is a widow. Her husband, a wealthy merchant or landowner, the records are unclear, has died, leaving her with property, money, and a reputation for independence that is unusual for a woman of her time. She is not young. She is not beautiful in the conventional sense. But she is intelligent. She is capable. She is strong. And she is looking for a husband. Not because she needs one. She has money enough to live comfortably on her own. But because she wants one. Because she is lonely. Because she believes that life is better shared, even in a world that tells women they should be silent and obedient. She has heard of Michel de Nostradamus. Everyone in Salon has heard of him. The doctor who saved Marseille. The man who can read the stars. The quiet, serious, somewhat mysterious widower who lives on the edge of town, keeps to himself, and never talks about his past. She is curious, and curiosity, in and Ponsard, is a powerful force. She arranges to meet him. Not directly, that would be improper. She arranges it through mutual acquaintances, through the small-town network of gossip and introduction that makes the world go round. She invites him to dinner. She asks his advice on a medical matter. She finds reasons to be in the same place at the same time. Michel is not stupid. He notices, and he is not indifferent, and is not Henriette. She does not remind him of his first wife. They are different in every way. Where Henriette was gentle and yielding, and is sharp and determined. Where Henriette was a girl and is a woman. Where Henriette needed protection and offers partnership. And Michel, after 12 years of loneliness, is ready for partnership. They marry in 1547. Michel is 43 years old and is probably in her 30s. Her exact age is unknown. It is a second marriage for both of them. There are no illusions of youthful romance, no pretense of passion, but there is respect. There is companionship. There is the quiet, steady warmth of two people who have suffered and survived and found each other in the wreckage. And there is something else. There is business, and is wealthy. She owns property in Salon and the surrounding countryside. She has connections to the local nobility, the church, the merchant class. She knows how to navigate the social world that Michel has always found baffling and threatening. She becomes his manager, his protector, his partner in every sense of the word. She arranges his medical practice. She handles his finances. She shields him from the petty politics of the town. She creates a space, physical, social, emotional, where he can do what he does best: think, write, and heal. Without an Ponsard, there is no Nostradamus. This is not an exaggeration. It is a historical fact. For the next 19 years, until his death in 1566, Michel will produce the most important work of his life. He will write thousands of quatrains. He will publish almanacs and treatises. He will become the most famous prophet in history. And he will do all of it because an Ponsard made it possible. They buy a house on the Rue de l'Estelle, the Street of the Star. It is a large house, by the standards of the town, 3 stories, with a garden, a stable, and enough room for the children they plan to have. Yes, children. Michel is 43 and is in her 30s. They are not young, but they are not old either, and they want a family over the next 15 years and will give birth to 6 children, 3 sons and 3 daughters. César, Charles, André, Madeline, Anne, and Diane. 6 children. 6 reasons to live. 6 reasons to hope. 6 reasons to believe that the future is not entirely dark. Michel is a different father this time. Not because he loves these children more than he loved his first. Grief does not work that way. But because he is different. He has been broken and rebuilt. He has faced death and survived. He has learned that love is not a guarantee of safety, that the universe does not reward the good or punish the bad, that every moment of joy is borrowed time. So he savors it. He holds his children. He tells them stories. He teaches them to read the stars, carefully, discreetly, never letting the neighbors see. He writes poems for them. He draws pictures of them. He fills his notebooks with their names, their birth dates, their astrological charts. And he writes. The almanacs come first. In 1550, Michel publishes his first almanac, a small booklet of astrological predictions for the coming year. Almanacs are common in the 16th century. Everyone publishes them: doctors, astrologers, monks, charlatans. They predict the weather, the harvests, the political events, the movements of the planets. Michel's almanac is different. It is more accurate, more specific, more daring. He predicts a drought in the summer of 1550. He predicts a naval battle in the Mediterranean. He predicts the death of a prominent churchman. And he is right. All of it. The almanac sells out within weeks. A second printing is ordered, then a third. People who cannot read have it read to them in taverns and marketplaces. Copies travel to Paris, to Lyon, to Geneva, to Rome. Michel becomes famous. Not world famous, not yet, but famous enough that strangers stop him in the street. Famous enough that nobles send letters asking for private consultations. Famous enough that the Inquisition starts to pay attention. And that is when he knows. He knows that he cannot stop. He has started something. He has opened a door. And now the only way forward is through. Visual, a man looking at a stack of paper. Knowing. The almanacs continue. 1551, 1552, 1553, 1554. Each one more successful than the last. Each one more specific, more daring, more accurate. And then, in 1554, Michel makes a decision. He will write the book he has been preparing for his entire life. The book that will contain everything he has learned. The book that will predict the future of the world. The book that will make him immortal, or destroy him. He calls it Les Prophecies, the Prophecies. And he begins to write. The attic of the house on the Rue de l'Estelle is small. Low ceilings, slanted walls. A single window that looks out over the rooftops of Salon de Provence, toward the Alpilles Mountains, toward the stars. It is hot in summer, cold in winter, dusty always. The floorboards creak. The mice scurry in the walls, and it is the most important room in the world, because this is where Michel de Nostradamus writes. The attic is his sanctuary, his laboratory, his temple. No one is allowed inside without permission, not the children, not the servants. The door is kept locked. The key hangs on a chain around Michel's neck. Inside, the room is a chaos of knowledge. Books are stacked on every surface. Medical texts in Latin, astrological treatises in Arabic, Kabbalistic manuscripts in Hebrew, classical poetry in Greek. Papers cover the floor, notes, calculations, diagrams, maps. On a shelf in the corner sits a brass astrolabe, its gears worn smooth by decades of use. On the desk, a bowl of water, plain, ceramic, unremarkable. And in the center of the room, a tripod. A brass tripod, three-legged, about 3 feet high. On top of the tripod, the bowl of water. This is the apparatus of his visions. Michel has never described his method in detail. He has never written a manual on how to see the future. But from scattered references in his letters and the accounts of those who knew him, we can reconstruct the ritual. He enters the attic at night. He locks the door. He lights a candle, only one, to minimize distraction. He sits before the tripod. He stares into the water, and he waits. He empties his mind. He breathes slowly, deeply, rhythmically. He focuses on the surface of the water, the ripples, the reflections, the play of light and shadow. He enters a state of trance, a state between waking and sleeping, a state where the boundaries of time begin to dissolve. And then, sometimes, the visions come. He sees battles. He sees kings falling. He sees cities burning. He sees inventions that have not been invented, wars that have not been fought, disasters that have not happened. He sees the future, not all of it, not clearly, not reliably, but enough. Enough to know that what he is seeing is real. Enough to know that he must write it down. He writes in quatrains, 4-line verses, 10 syllables per line, in a mixture of French, Latin, Provençal, Greek, and Italian. He uses anagrams. He uses abbreviations. He uses astrological symbols and mythological references. He writes in a code that is deliberately obscure, not to hide the truth from everyone, but to hide it from the wrong people, from the Inquisition, from the kings who might kill him for predicting their deaths, from the church that might burn him for claiming to know what only God should know. He writes to be understood by the future, not by the present. The work is exhausting, physically, mentally, spiritually. Each vision drains him. Each quatrain costs him something: sleep, health, peace of mind. He emerges from the attic pale, shaking, unable to speak for hours, and worries. She sees what this is doing to him. She sees the toll it takes, the weight loss, the insomnia, the fits of melancholy that leave him staring at the wall for days. She begs him to stop, to rest, to be a husband, a father, a doctor, the things that normal men are. But Michel cannot stop, because he has seen something that drives him forward even when his body wants to quit. He has seen the end, not the end of his world, the end of the world. He has seen wars that will kill millions. He has seen plagues that will dwarf the Black Death. He has seen weapons that can destroy cities in an instant. He has seen the sky itself turn to fire. He does not know when these things will happen. He does not know if they can be prevented. He only knows that they are coming. And he knows that he must warn the world, even if the world does not want to hear, even if the world kills him for speaking. By 1555, He has written nearly 1,000 quatrains. He has organized them into 10 sections, 10 centuries, each containing 100 quatrains. The 7th century is incomplete, containing only 42 quatrains. No one knows why. Perhaps he ran out of time. Perhaps he ran out of visions. Perhaps he knew that some things should not be written. He takes the manuscript to a publisher in Lyon, a man named Mace Bonhomme, who specializes in occult and astrological texts. Bonhomme reads the manuscript. He is amazed. He is terrified. He is certain that this book will either make him rich or get him burned at the stake. He publishes it anyway. Les Prophecies is published in 1555. It is an instant sensation. Copies sell out within days. The book is passed from hand to hand, read aloud in taverns, debated in universities, condemned from pulpits. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to know, is this real? Can this man actually see the future? Or is he a fraud, a madman, a tool of the devil? The church is divided. Some priests dismiss the book as nonsense. Others see it as a dangerous challenge to their authority. A few, secretly, read it with fascination, wondering if this Jewish doctor from Provence might actually be a prophet. The nobility is intrigued. Kings and queens send spies to Salon de Provence to learn more about this mysterious man. They want to know what he has predicted about them. They want to know if their reigns are safe, their dynasties secure, their enemies doomed. And the common people? The common people love it, because for the first time in their lives, someone is telling them the future. Someone is lifting the veil of uncertainty that hangs over every human life. Someone is saying, I know what will happen. I know why you suffer. I know that history has a meaning, a pattern, a purpose. It does not matter whether they believe him or not. What matters is that he gives them hope, or warning, or both. But the most important reader of Les Prophecies is not a commoner. She is a queen, and she is about to summon Michel de Nostradamus to the most dangerous court in Europe. The court of King Henry II of France is a snake pit. Not literally, though there are probably snakes in the gardens. But metaphorically, politically, spiritually, it is a place of constant danger. A place where a wrong word, a wrong look, a wrong alliance can end in disgrace, exile, or death. And at the center of this snake pit sits a woman who is more dangerous than all the rest combined. Her name is Catherine de' Medici. Catherine is the queen consort of France. She is the wife of Henry II, the mother of his children, the mistress of his household. But she is much more than that. She is a Medici. And the Medici are not just a family. They are a dynasty, a banking dynasty that has ruled Florence for 200 years, a political dynasty that has produced 3 popes and countless cardinals, a cultural dynasty that has patronized Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Machiavelli. Catherine was born in Florence in 1519, the same year Michel arrived at the University of Avignon. She was sent to France at the age of 14 to marry Henry, then the Duke of Orleans. She has spent the last 36 years navigating the treacherous waters of the French court, surviving the hostility of her husband's mistress, Diane de Poitiers, producing 10 children, 7 of whom survived infancy, and building a network of spies, astrologers, and occultists that would make the Inquisition weep with envy. She is superstitious. She is paranoid. She is brilliant. And she is obsessed with the future. Catherine has read Les Prophecies. She has read it carefully, thoroughly, obsessively. She has had her astrologers analyze every quatrain. She has had her code breakers search for references to her family, her husband, her children. And she has found something. a quatrain that terrifies her. Quatrain I-35. The young lion shall overcome the older one. On the field of combat in single battle, he will pierce his eyes in a golden cage. 2 wounds in one, then he dies a cruel death. Catherine knows what this means, or she thinks she does. The young lion is her husband's younger son, Francis. Or perhaps it is her husband himself, who is younger than his rival. The older lion is someone. The golden cage is something. The 2 wounds in one is what? She does not know for certain, but she suspects. And suspicion, in Catherine de' Medici, is as powerful as certainty. She wants to meet the man who wrote this. She wants to look into his eyes and see if he is a prophet or a fraud. She wants to know if her husband is going to die. The summons arrives in Salon de Provence in the autumn of 1555. It is addressed to Michel de Nostradamus, doctor and astrologer. It bears the royal seal. It commands him to appear before the Queen at the Château de Saint-Germain-en-Laye, outside Paris, at his earliest convenience. Michel reads the letter. He does not move for a long time. He knows what this means. He knows that going to the court of Catherine de' Medici is like walking into a lion's den. He knows that the Queen is not inviting him for tea and conversation. She is interrogating him, testing him, deciding whether he is useful or dangerous. And he knows something else. He knows that Quatrain I-35 is about Henry II. He has known it since he wrote it. Michel does not want to go. He is 51 years old. He has a wife he loves, children he adores, a home he has built with his own hands. He has everything he ever wanted: respect, security, a place in the world. And he is about to risk it all, because he cannot say no to the Queen, because he has spent his life seeking the truth, and now the truth has found him. He tells Anne. She does not try to stop him. She knows better, but she holds him longer than usual that night. She whispers things in his ear that he will carry with him to Paris. She gives him a small leather pouch containing herbs for protection, rosemary, sage, and something else, something she will not name. And in the morning, he leaves. The journey to Paris takes 2 weeks. Michel travels with a small entourage, a secretary, a servant, a bodyguard. He is not used to such luxury. He is not used to being treated as a person of importance. He is a doctor from a small town, a Jewish convert from a persecuted family, a man who has spent his life on the margins. Now he is traveling like a nobleman, and it terrifies him, because he knows that this treatment is not a gift. It is a test. The court is watching him, judging him, deciding whether he is worthy of their attention or whether he is a charlatan who should be thrown in prison. He spends the journey reviewing his quatrains, trying to remember what he wrote, why he wrote it, what it means. He knows that Catherine will ask him specific questions. He knows that he must be careful. Careful not to reveal too much. Careful not to reveal too little. Careful not to say anything that could be interpreted as treason or heresy. He arrives at Saint-Germain-en-Laye on a cold November day. The chateau is magnificent, a sprawling palace of stone and glass, surrounded by gardens that have been stripped bare by autumn. Guards in royal livery stand at every gate. Courtiers in silk and velvet stroll through the halls, whispering, plotting, watching. Michel is shown to a small room. He is told to wait. He waits for 3 hours. Finally, the door opens, and Catherine de' Medici enters. She is smaller than he expected, dressed entirely in black, not mourning, but her preferred color. Her face is pale, her eyes dark and penetrating. She looks at Michel not as a queen looks at a subject, but as a scientist looks at a specimen. with curiosity, with suspicion, with hunger. Dr. Nostradamus, she says. Her voice is soft, almost gentle. I have read your book, Michel Bose. Your Majesty honors me. I do not know if it is an honor, she says. Your book frightens me. Michel says nothing. Quatrain I 35, she continues. The young lion and the older lion. The golden cage. The cruel death. Tell me, doctor, who is the lion? Michel looks at her. He knows that his answer will determine everything. His life, his freedom, his future. And he knows that he cannot lie. Not to this woman. Not to anyone. Not anymore. The lion is your husband, Majesty, he says. King Henry II. Catherine does not flinch. She does not gasp. She does not call for the guards. She simply nods. When? She asks. Michel hesitates. He has not predicted a date. He has only seen the event, a joust, a tournament, a moment of violence. He does not know when it will happen. He only knows that it will. Within 10 years, he says. Perhaps sooner. I cannot be more precise. Catherine studies him for a long moment. And then she smiles. Not a warm smile. Not a friendly smile. A smile of recognition. Of acknowledgement. Of two. You will stay at court, she says. As my personal astrologer. You will cast horoscopes for my children. You will advise me on matters of state. And you will tell me everything you see. Everything. Michel bows again. But inside, his heart is breaking. Because he knows what this means. He has just sold his freedom for his life. And the price will be higher than he can imagine. The French court is the most magnificent prison in the world. Every surface is gilded. Every meal is a feast. Every night is a ball, a mask, a celebration of power and wealth and beauty. The king is young, handsome, charismatic. His mistress, Diane de Poitiers, is the most beautiful woman in France. His courtiers are poets, warriors, and diplomats, the best and brightest of a golden age. And Michel de Nostradamus hates every moment of it. He is given apartments in the Louvre, a suite of rooms that would cost a fortune in any city. He is given a salary, generous, regular, more money than he has ever made as a doctor. He is given clothes, velvet, silk, fur, that mark him as a person of importance. He is given everything except what he wants. Freedom. Privacy. The ability to speak his mind without fear. At court, every word is weighed. Every glance is analyzed. Every friendship is a potential alliance. Every enemy a potential assassin. Michel cannot walk through the gardens without being followed by spies. He cannot write a letter without it being read by the Queen's agents. He cannot look at the stars without someone asking what he sees. He is a prisoner in a golden cage, and the cage is getting smaller. Henry II loves jousting. It is his passion, his obsession, his escape from the pressures of kingship. He trains for hours every day. He enters every tournament. He has never been defeated. His skill with a lance is legendary, his courage unquestioned. He is 35 years old, in the prime of life. Strong, fast, fearless. And Michel has predicted his death in a joust. Michel watches Henry practice. He watches the king charge down the lists, his lance aimed at his opponent's shield, his horse thundering beneath him. He watches the splinters fly, the shields crack, the crowd cheer. And he sees it. He sees the moment that he wrote about. The young lion overcoming the... He sees it as clearly as if it is happening before him. And he cannot stop it. He tries. He tells Catherine. He begs her to forbid the king from jousting. He warns her that the prophecy is approaching. that the danger is real, that every tournament brings Henry closer to his fate. Catherine listens. She believes him, or she wants to believe him. But she cannot control her husband. Henry is the king. He does what he wants, and what he wants is to joust. She forbids the most dangerous tournaments. She limits the number of challengers. She insists on extra safety measures, thicker armor, blunter lances, stricter rules. But Henry finds ways around every restriction. He justs in private. He justs in secret. He justs because he is young and strong and immortal, and no prophecy can touch him. And Michel watches, helpless. The years pass. Michel remains at court. He casts horoscopes for the royal children: Francis, Elizabeth, Claude, Charles, Henry, Margaret, and the others. He advises Catherine on political matters, which alliances to make, which enemies to watch, which dates are auspicious for important decisions. He becomes indispensable, and he becomes invisible. No one sees him anymore. He is part of the furniture of the court, the quiet old man in the corner, the astrologer who never smiles, the prophet who never prophesies in public. He writes, secretly, at night, in his rooms. He adds to the centuries. He records his visions. He builds the monument that will outlast them all. But his heart is not in it. His heart is in Salon de Provence, with and the children. His heart is in the attic, with the bowl of water and the brass tripod. His heart is in the stars, not in the gilded halls of the Louvre. And then, in June 1559, everything changes. June 30th, 1559. The Place de Vosges, Paris. Henry II is celebrating the Peace of Cateau-Cambrésis, the end of 20 years of war with Spain. The treaty has been signed. The hostages exchanged. The kingdom is at peace. To mark the occasion, Henry has organized a grand tournament. The noblest knights in France have gathered to compete. The king himself will be the final challenger. Michel is there. He stands in the royal box, next to Catherine. He watches Henry mount his horse. He watches the king take his lance. He watches him charge down the lists toward his opponent, a Scottish captain named Gabriel de Montgomery. And he sees Montgomery's lance strike Henry's helmet. He sees the lance shatter. He sees the splinter, a long, jagged piece of wood, fly through the air. He sees it enter the visor of Henry's helmet. He sees it pierce the king's eye. He sees it drive into his brain. He sees it all. And he screams. The sound that comes out of Michel's mouth is not human. It is the sound of a man who has watched the future unfold exactly as he predicted, exactly as he feared, exactly as he tried to prevent. It is the sound of a man who knows that his prophecy has just killed a king. Henry falls from his horse. The crowd goes silent. For a moment, no one moves. Then the screaming starts. The queen, the courtiers, the thousands of spectators who have just watched their king die before their eyes. Michel does not move. He stands there, frozen, as the world collapses around him. He has seen this moment 1,000 times in his visions. He has written about it, warned about it, tried to prevent it. And now it is real. Now it is happening. Now a man is dead because Michel de Nostradamus looked into a bowl of water and saw the future. What have I done? The question echoes in his mind. Not for the first time, not for the last, but this time it is louder. This time, it is accompanied by the screams of a widow and the silence of a kingdom. Catherine does not blame him, at least not publicly. She knows that Michel warned her. She knows that he tried to prevent this. She knows that the fault lies with Henry's stubbornness. not with Michel's vision. But she also knows something else. She knows that Michel de Nostradamus is the most dangerous man in France. Because he was right. Because his prophecy came true. Because everyone, the court, the church, the people, now knows that this quiet doctor from Provence can see the future. And that makes him more powerful than any king. Catherine becomes regent. Henry's eldest son, Francis II, is only 15 years old. He is sickly, weak, dominated by his wife, Mary, Queen of Scots, and her uncles, the powerful Guy's family. Catherine rules in his name. She rules through him. She rules despite him. And she keeps Michel close. Not as a prisoner, that would be too obvious, but as a pet, a curiosity, a court astrologer who is available whenever she needs him, invisible whenever she does not. Michel accepts. What choice does he have? He is 55 years old. His health is failing. The gout that started in Marseille has spread to every joint in his body. His hands, once steady enough to perform surgery, now shake so badly that he can barely hold a pen. His eyes, once sharp enough to read the stars, are starting to dim. He is dying. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. And he knows it. But he also knows something else. He knows that his work is not finished. He has written nearly 1,000 quatrains. But there are more visions, more futures, more warnings that the world needs to hear. So he writes. In the small hours of the night, when the court is asleep and the palace is silent, Michel sits at his desk and writes. He writes about events that will not happen for centuries. He writes about wars and revolutions and disasters that no one alive will ever see. He writes about the end of the world and the beginning of whatever comes after. And he writes about one thing more. He writes about himself. Quatrain 6-100, the last one bearing the name of the prophet, will take Diana for his day of rest. He will wander far because of a frantic head, and delivering a great people from subjection. Quatrain 8-1, How, nay, Laurent, more fire than blood will be. Swimming in praise, the great one will be consoled, when the enemies are expelled from the Bashkir, and he cannot establish himself in Toulouse. These are the last quatrains, the ones that predict his own death, his own legacy, his own immortality. He does not know if they are true. He does not know if anyone will ever understand them. He only knows that he must write them, because writing is the only thing that keeps him alive. And then, in 1560, another blow. Francis II dies. He is 16 years old. He has been king for less than 18 months. He dies of an ear infection, a trivial thing, easily treatable with modern medicine, fatal in the 16th century. Catherine is devastated, not because she loved Francis. She loved all her children, but Francis was never her favorite. She is devastated because Francis's death means that her second son, Charles, must become king. Charles IX. He is 10 years old, a child. And Catherine must rule in his name for years to come. Michel watches this from the sidelines. He is no longer at the center of power. Catherine has other astrologers now. Luc Goric, the most famous of them, who flatters her and tells her what she wants to hear. Michel is old, sick, inconvenient. He speaks truths that no one wants to hear. So he is sent away. Not exiled. That would draw attention. But encouraged to return to Salon de Provence. To rest. To recover. To be with his family. He goes willingly. Because he is tired. Tired of the court. Tired of the prophecies. Tired of watching the future unfold like a horror story he cannot stop. He wants to go home. And in 1560, he does. But the world will not let him rest. Because in 1562, the wars of religion begin, and Michel de Nostradamus will watch his country tear itself apart. The French court is the most magnificent prison in the world. Every surface is gilded. Every meal is a feast. Every night is a ball, a mask, a celebration of power and wealth and beauty. The king is young, handsome, charismatic. His mistress, Diane de Poitiers, is the most beautiful woman in France. His courtiers are poets, warriors, and diplomats, the best and brightest of a golden age. And Michel de Nostradamus hates every moment of it. He is given apartments in the Louvre, a suite of rooms that would cost a fortune in any city. He is given a salary, generous, regular, more money than he has ever made as a doctor. He is given clothes, velvet, silk, fur, that mark him as a person of importance. He is given everything except what he wants. Freedom, privacy, the ability to speak his mind without fear. At court, every word is weighed. Every glance is analyzed. Every friendship is a potential alliance. Every enemy a potential assassin. Michel cannot walk through the gardens without being followed by spies. He cannot write a letter without it being read by the Queen's agents. He cannot look at the stars without someone asking what he sees. He is a prisoner in a golden cage, and the cage is getting smaller. Henry II loves jousting. It is his passion, his obsession, his escape from the pressures of kingship. He trains for hours every day. He enters every tournament. He has never been defeated. His skill with a lance is legendary, his courage unquestioned. He is 35 years old, in the prime of life, strong, fast, fearless. And Michel has predicted his death in a joust. Michel watches Henry practice. He watches the king charge down the lists, his lance aimed at his opponent's shield, his horse thundering beneath him. He watches the splinters fly, the shields crack, the crowd cheer. And he sees it. He sees the moment that he wrote about, the young lion overcoming the older, the golden cage, the visor of the king's helmet gleaming in the sun, the two wounds in one, a splinter piercing the eye, driving into the brain. He sees it as clearly as if it is happening before him, and he cannot stop it. He tries. He tells Catherine. He begs her to forbid the king from jousting. He warns her that the prophecy is approaching, that the danger is real, that every tournament brings Henry closer to his fate. Catherine listens. She believes him, or she wants to believe him. But she cannot control her husband. Henry is the king. He does what he wants, and what he wants is to joust. She forbids the most dangerous tournaments. She limits the number of challengers. She insists on extra safety measures, thicker armor, blunter lances, stricter rules. But Henry finds ways around every restriction. He justs in private. He justs in secret. He justs because he is young and strong and immortal, and no prophecy can touch him. And Michel watches, helpless. The years pass. Michel remains at court. He casts horoscopes for the royal children, Francis, Elizabeth, Claude, Charles, Henry, Margaret, and the others. He advises Catherine on political matters, which alliances to make, which enemies to watch, which dates are auspicious for important decisions. He becomes indispensable, and he becomes invisible. No one sees him anymore. He is part of the furniture of the court, the quiet old man in the corner, the astrologer who never smiles, the prophet who never prophesies in public. He writes, secretly, at night, in his rooms. He adds to the centuries, He records his visions. He builds the monument that will outlast them all. But his heart is not in it. His heart is in Salonda province, with Anne and the children. His heart is in the attic, with the bowl of water and the brass tripod. His heart is in the stars, not in the gilded halls of the Louvre. And then, in June 1559, everything changes. June 30th, 1559. The Place de Vosges, Paris. Henry II is celebrating the Peace of Cateau-Cambrésis, the end of 20 years of war with Spain. The treaty has been signed. The hostages exchanged. The kingdom is at peace. To mark the occasion, Henry has organized a grand tournament. The noblest knights in France have gathered to compete. The king himself will be the final challenger. Michel is there. He stands in the royal box, next to Catherine. He watches Henry mount his horse. He watches the king take his lance. He watches him charge down the lists toward his opponent, a Scottish captain named Gabriel de Montgomery. And he sees Montgomery's lance strike Henry's helmet. He sees the lance shatter. He sees the splinter, a long, jagged piece of wood, fly through the air. He sees it enter the visor of Henry's helmet. He sees it pierce the king's eye. He sees it drive into his brain. He sees it all. And he screams. The sound that comes out of Michel's mouth is not human. It is the sound of a man who has watched the future unfold exactly as he predicted, exactly as he feared, exactly as he tried to prevent. It is the sound of a man who knows that his prophecy has just killed a king. Henry falls from his horse. The crowd goes silent. For a moment, no one moves. Then the screaming starts. The queen, the courtiers, the thousands of spectators who have just watched their king die before their eyes. Michel does not move. He stands there, frozen, as the world collapses around him. He has seen this moment 1,000 times in his visions. He has written about it, warned about it, tried to prevent it. And now it is real. Now it is happening. Now a man is dead because Michel de Nostradamus looked into a bowl of water and saw the future. What have I done? The question echoes in his mind. Not for the first time, not for the last, but this time it is louder. This time, it is accompanied by the screams of a widow and the silence of a kingdom. Catherine does not blame him, at least not publicly. She knows that Michel warned her. She knows that he tried to prevent this. She knows that the fault lies with Henry's stubbornness, not with Michel's vision. But she also knows something else. She knows that Michel de Nostradamus is the most dangerous man in France. Because he was right. Because his prophecy came true. Because everyone, the court, the church, the people, now knows that this quiet doctor from Provence can see the future. And that makes him more powerful than any king. Catherine becomes regent. Henry's eldest son, Francis II, is only 15 years old. He is sickly, weak, dominated by his wife, Mary, Queen of Scots, and her uncles, the powerful Guy's family. Catherine rules in his name. She rules through him. She rules despite him. And she keeps Michel close. Not as a prisoner. That would be too obvious. But as a pet. A curiosity. A court astrologer who is available whenever she needs him. Invisible whenever she does not. Michel accepts. What choice does he have? He is 55 years old. His health is failing. The gout that started in Marseille has spread to every joint in his body. His hands, once steady enough to perform surgery, now shake so badly that he can barely hold a pen. His eyes, once sharp enough to read the stars, are starting to dim. He is dying. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. And he knows it. But he also knows something else. He knows that his work is not finished. He has written nearly 1,000 quatrains, but there are more visions, more futures, more warnings that the world needs to hear. So he writes, "In the small hours of the night, when the court is asleep and the palace is silent, Michel sits at his desk and writes." He writes about events that will not happen for centuries. He writes about wars and revolutions and disasters that no one alive will ever see. He writes about the end of the world and the beginning of whatever comes after. And he writes about one thing more. He writes about himself. Quatrain 6-100, the last one bearing the name of the prophet, will take Diana for his day of rest. He will wander far because of a frantic head, and delivering a great people from subjection. Quatrain 8-1, how, nay, Laurent, more fire than blood will be. Swimming in praise, the great one will be consoled, when the enemies are expelled from the Bashkir, and he cannot establish himself in Toulouse. These are the last quatrains, the ones that predict his own death, his own legacy, his own immortality. He does not know if they are true. He does not know if anyone will ever understand them. He only knows that he must write them, because writing is the only thing that keeps him alive. And then, in 1560, another blow. Francis II dies. He is 16 years old. He has been king for less than 18 months. He dies of an ear infection, a trivial thing, easily treatable with modern medicine, fatal in the 16th century. Catherine is devastated, not because she loved Francis. She loved all her children, but Francis was never her favorite. She is devastated because Francis's death means that her second son, Charles, must become king. Charles IX. He is 10 years old, a child, and Catherine must rule in his name for years to come. Michel watches this from the sidelines. He is no longer at the center of power. Catherine has other astrologers now, Luke Gorick, the most famous of them, who flatters her and tells her what she wants to hear. Michel is old, sick, inconvenient. He speaks truths that no one wants to hear. So he is sent away, not exiled, that would draw attention, but encouraged to return to Salon de Provence, to rest, to recover, to be with his family. He goes willingly, because he is tired of the court, tired of the prophecies, tired of watching the future unfold like a horror story he cannot stop. He wants to go home. And in 1560, he does. But the world will not let him rest. Because in 1562, the wars of religion begin. And Michel de Nostradamus will watch his country tear itself apart. The year is 1562, and France is at war with itself. Not with a foreign enemy, not with the English or the Spanish or the Germans. With itself, Catholic against Protestant, brother against brother, father against son. The spark was lit in 1559 when Henry II died. Without his strong hand, the factions that had been simmering beneath the surface explode into open conflict. The Catholic Guy's family, powerful, ruthless, devout, seizes control of the government. The Protestant Huguenots, led by the Bourbon princes and Admiral Coligny, rise in rebellion. The result is 36 years of civil war, 8 separate conflicts, massacres, sieges, assassinations, the destruction of everything that made France great. And Michel watches it all from Salon de Provence. He is too old to fight, too sick to travel, too famous, or too infamous to take sides. So he writes. He writes about the war, about the suffering, about the destruction of the world he knows. He writes quatrains that predict the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of 1572, though he will not live to see it. He writes about the death of kings, the fall of dynasties, the end of an era. And he writes about something else. He writes about hope. Quatrain X74. The year of the great seventh number accomplished. It will appear at the time of the games of sacrifice, not far from the age of the great millennium, when the dead will come out of their graves. This quatrain has been interpreted in 1,000 ways. Some say it predicts the French Revolution. Some say it predicts the end of the world. Some say it is a reference to the resurrection of the dead at the Last Judgment. But in 1562, as Michel writes it, it means something simpler. It means that this will end, that the suffering will not last forever, that the dead will be avenged, that the world will be reborn. It is the hope of a man who has seen too much death, and is his anchor. She has aged too. Her hair is gray, her face lined, her hands rough from years of work. But she is still strong, still capable, still the partner he needs. She runs the household. She manages the children. She protects Michel from the world, from the letters demanding prophecies, from the visitors seeking miracles, from the Inquisition agents who still watch him from a distance. She is his fortress, and he is crumbling. The gout has spread to his knees, his elbows, his shoulders. He can barely walk. The dropsy, fluid retention, has swollen his legs and abdomen to twice their normal size. His heart is failing. His kidneys are failing. His body is shutting down, piece by piece, organ by organ. He knows he is dying, and he knows when. He has seen it. In a vision 2 years ago, a vision of himself, lying in bed, surrounded by his family, speaking his final words. He has written it down, not in the centuries, those are for the world. He has written it in a private letter to his son Cesar. I will not be found alive when the sun rises on July 2nd, 1566. He has known this for 2 years. And now, as June 1566 draws to a close, the prophecy is about to be fulfilled. June 30th, 1566. The summer sun settled slowly over the rooftops of Solanda province, bathing the narrow streets in warm amber light. Merchants closed their shutters. Children chased one another through the marketplace. Bells from the nearby church echoed softly across the stone houses as another ordinary evening came to an end. But behind the walls of one modest home on the Rue de l'Estelle, time itself seemed to have stopped. The house had witnessed decades of extraordinary nights. Within these walls, Michel de Nostradamus had written verses that would travel farther than any king's decree. Here he had welcomed noblemen, physicians, priests, ambassadors, and desperate mothers seeking hope. Here he had stared into bowls of still water beneath flickering candlelight, searching for patterns hidden beyond ordinary sight. Tonight, however, the famous scholar no longer searched for tomorrow. Tomorrow had already found him. The room on the second floor was quiet except for the uneven rhythm of a dying man's breathing. Books filled every shelf from floor to ceiling. Many bore worn leather bindings polished smooth by decades of use. Astronomical charts lay rolled upon a nearby table. Dust floated through the room like tiny stars suspended in the evening air. Everything looked familiar. Everything looked unchanged, except the man lying upon the bed. Michel de Nostradamus was only 62 years old, yet illness had stolen decades from his face. His cheeks had hollowed. His skin stretched tightly across his bones. Thick swelling from dropsy had transformed his body into something almost unrecognizable. Fluid pressed painfully against his lungs, forcing every breath to become a conscious struggle. He could no longer lie flat. He sat propped against heavy pillows, wrapped in blankets despite the warmth of summer. Each inhalation sounded like someone climbing a mountain. Each exhalation carried the exhaustion of a lifetime. To those around him, he appeared broken. Yet behind tired eyes, his mind remained astonishingly clear, perhaps clearer than ever before. Throughout his life, Michel had spent countless nights wondering whether he truly saw glimpses of tomorrow or whether his visions emerged from an imagination shaped by astrology, history, scripture, and fear. Now those questions no longer mattered. Death possesses a remarkable gift. It strips away uncertainty, and Ponsard, his wife, sat quietly beside him. She had scarcely slept in 3 days. She knew every change in his breathing, every twitch of pain, every movement of his hands. She no longer asked physicians for hopeful opinions. She no longer searched for miracle cures. She simply remained beside the man she had loved for nearly 20 years. Sometimes love speaks loudest through silence. Michel slowly reached for her hand. His grip was weak, yet and squeezed it gently, as though reassuring him that nothing, not illness, not prophecy, not even death itself, could separate two lives so completely intertwined. Neither spoke. There were no final speeches left to give, no hidden confessions. Life had already spoken for them. Downstairs, the household moved quietly. Servants whispered instead of talking. Doors closed softly. Footsteps became careful. Everyone understood what was happening. The children understood most of all. Cesar paced restlessly through the hall. 20 years old enough to be considered a man, young enough to feel like a frightened child. People across Europe believed his father possessed supernatural knowledge. Kings had sought his advice. Queens had trusted his predictions. Scholars debated his writings. Yet to Cesar, Michel de Nostradamus was simply his father, the man who had taught him to read, who corrected his Latin, who laughed unexpectedly during family meals, who explained that curiosity mattered more than certainty. Now that man was dying, and Cesar discovered a terrible truth that every child eventually learns. No amount of fame can protect a father from mortality. No prophecy can delay death forever. He wanted to cry. Instead, he walked, again and again, as though movement alone could outrun grief. Throughout the afternoon, visitors arrived. Neighbors, friends, former patients, several prominent citizens of Ceylon. Many expected to hear final wisdom from the famous prophet. Instead, they encountered remarkable peace. Michel welcomed each visitor kindly. He thanked them. He asked about their families. He spoke of ordinary things, the harvest, the weather, children growing older. It puzzled everyone. Shouldn't a dying prophet speak of heaven? Shouldn't he reveal hidden mysteries? Shouldn't he deliver one final revelation? Instead, he smiled gently, as though reminding everyone that ordinary life had always been miraculous enough. Late in the evening, a priest arrived. The church expected every Christian to receive the final sacraments before death. The elderly clergyman entered respectfully. He carried holy oil, prayer books, the familiar rituals that had comforted countless dying souls. Michel greeted him warmly. They spoke privately for several minutes. No one knows every word exchanged between them, but witnesses later recorded that Nostradamus politely declined the final rites, not because he rejected Christianity, nor because he embraced heresy. Rather, He seemed completely at peace with whatever waited beyond life. He thanked the priest sincerely, then wished him safe travels home. The priest departed puzzled. He had seen fear countless times. He had seen denial, anger, regret, desperation. He had never seen such quiet certainty. As darkness settled across Provence, candles illuminated the room. Their flames danced gently against ancient walls. Michel stared into them. Fire had fascinated humanity since the beginning of civilization. It warmed. It destroyed. It revealed. It concealed. Like prophecy itself. And noticed him smiling. "What is it?" she whispered. Michel answered slowly. "I remember another candle." She waited. "The one my grandfather lit when teaching me the Hebrew letters." His voice weakened. "I believed every flame held a secret," and smiled sadly. "And now?" He looked toward the window where twilight faded into stars. "Now I know the secret." "What is it?" "Every flame eventually goes out." A long silence followed. But before it does, he watched the candle flicker. "It gives light." Outside, the first stars emerged. For decades, Michel had studied those same heavens. He had calculated planetary conjunctions, observed eclipses, measured celestial movements with astonishing patience. Critics mocked astrology. Believers embraced it. Michel himself occupied a complicated middle ground. The stars, he believed, did not command humanity. They suggested possibilities. They revealed rhythms. Nothing more. Nothing less. Tonight, he no longer searched the heavens for answers. He simply admired them. How many evenings had he wasted trying to unlock the future? How many hours had he spent searching for certainty where only mystery existed? Perhaps that search itself had been worthwhile. Not because it revealed tomorrow, but because it taught humility. Near midnight, he requested someone. "Bring Chavigny." Jean aimed at Chavigny, entered moments later. Secretary. Student. Friend. Disciple. No one understood Michel's writings better. No one had devoted more years preserving his work. He approached quietly. His eyes were red from exhaustion. "My master." Michel gestured toward the chair. "Sit." Chavigny obeyed. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Michel inhaled deeply. "Tomorrow." His voice almost disappeared. "At sunrise." Another breath. "You will find me dead." The room became completely still. Chavigny stared without blinking. He had heard predictions before. He had watched astonishing coincidences become legend. He had witnessed events that seemed impossible. Yet hearing a man calmly announce the exact hour of his own death carried a different weight altogether. "You are certain?" he whispered. Michel smiled faintly. "I have never been more certain of anything. Should I summon another physician?" "No." "Another priest?" "No." "What should I do?" Michel looked directly into his student's eyes. "Remember." The word hung in the air. "Remember?" "Not my prophecies." Another pause. "Remember the man." Tears formed in Chavigny's eyes. "The world will make me into something I never was." He coughed painfully. "They will call me magician." Another cough. "They will call me fraud. They will call me saint. They will call me devil." He shook his head weakly. "I was only a man." His breathing became labored. "A curious man. A frightened man. A hopeful man. Write that." Chavigny nodded through tears. "I promise." Michel closed his eyes. For a while everyone believed he had fallen asleep. Then he spoke once more. So many people will search my verses, his words barely audible, looking for tomorrow. He smiled. They should have looked for today. The candle beside the bed burned steadily through the night. Outside, Salon de Provence slept peacefully beneath a sky crowded with stars. No angelic choir filled the heavens. No miraculous light appeared above the house. Only silence. Only darkness. Only time continuing its endless march. Chavigny refused to leave the hallway. Every hour he quietly entered the room. Midnight. Michel still breathed. 1 o'clock. His breathing slowed. 2. 3. Each visit seemed more difficult than the last. Around 4 in the morning, exhaustion finally overcame him. He lowered himself into a wooden chair outside the bedroom. "I'll close my eyes for only a moment," he whispered. Morning arrived unnoticed. A cool breeze drifted through the open window. Birds began singing somewhere beyond the rooftops. Soft gray light spread across Provence. Chavigny awoke instantly. Sunrise. His heart pounded. He hurried into the room and remained seated exactly where she had been hours earlier, still holding Michel's hand, still watching him. Only now, she was alone. Michel de Nostradamus no longer breathed. His expression carried extraordinary calm, almost serenity, as though he had simply stepped into another room. Chavigny looked toward the eastern window. The first rays of sunlight crossed the floor, exactly as Michel had foretold. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Chavigny quietly removed his cap, not in astonishment, not in fear, but in respect. History would remember many things about Michel de Nostradamus. His prophecies, his quatrains, his mysterious visions. Yet perhaps his final prediction revealed something deeper than supernatural foresight. It revealed a man who had spent an entire lifetime contemplating mortality until, when death finally arrived, he greeted it not as an enemy, but as an old companion whose footsteps he had heard approaching for years. The death of Michel de Nostradamus should have marked the end of his story. History is filled with brilliant men whose names disappeared almost as quickly as they died. Physicians whose discoveries were forgotten. Philosophers whose books gathered dust. Kings whose monuments crumbled into anonymous stone. The 16th century alone produced thousands of scholars who were celebrated during their lifetimes and completely forgotten by the next generation. Death usually has the final word, but not this time. Because when Michel de Nostradamus died on the morning of July 2nd, 1566, something extraordinary happened. The man disappeared. The legend remained. The bells of Salon de Provence rang slowly as news spread through the town. The physician is dead. The astrologer is dead. The prophet is dead. Each person chose different words. Some remembered him as the doctor who had risked his own life treating plague victims when wealthier physicians fled the cities. Others remembered the quiet scholar who spent evenings studying the stars from the roof of his home. Still others remembered the mysterious man whose strange verses had somehow found their way into royal palaces across Europe. Before noon, people had begun gathering outside his house, not because they expected miracles, because they wanted to witness the end of an extraordinary life. Some removed their hats, others prayed. A few simply stood in silence. It was the silence that surprised everyone. There was no chaos, no spectacle, only the strange feeling that an age had quietly ended. Inside the house, and watched as friends prepared her husband's body. She had known this moment was coming. No amount of preparation makes it easier. She gently closed his eyelids, straightened the blanket, ran her fingers once more through the gray hair that illness had thinned. His face had once been young, hopeful, ambitious. It had smiled at her across crowded rooms. It had laughed with their children. It had frowned over unfinished manuscripts. Now it rested in complete peace. She whispered only 4 words. "You may rest now." While grief settled over the household, another emotion slowly began taking shape. Responsibility. No one felt its weight more heavily than César de Nostradamus. Only 20 years old, he suddenly found himself standing before shelves filled with one of Europe's most controversial collections of writings. Leather-bound notebooks, loose sheets, astrological calculations, letters from kings, medical observations, drafts of unfinished quatrains, corrections scribbled into margins, hundreds upon hundreds of pages. To most people they were old papers. To César they were his father's mind made visible. He carefully lifted one notebook. Its corners were worn smooth. Ink stains covered the edges. A page had been folded years earlier and never reopened. He smiled faintly. His father had always folded pages instead of using bookmarks. Small habits survive longer than great achievements. He opened another volume. The handwriting shifted from elegant script to hurried scratches, depending upon the urgency of the ideas. Entire paragraphs had been crossed out. New thoughts squeezed between lines. Some pages contained astronomical diagrams. Others held only a single sentence. Many ended abruptly, as though inspiration had arrived faster than ink could follow. César realized something heartbreaking. These were not the writings of a mythical prophet. They were the working papers of an endlessly curious human being. Jean-Aimé de Chavigny joined him several days later. The secretary looked older than he had a week earlier. Grief had a way of doing that. Together they began the enormous task of preserving Michel's legacy. Every page had to be examined. Every manuscript identified, every damaged document repaired. Some papers had been exposed to candle wax. Others carried stains from medicine or wine. Several had become nearly illegible. The work progressed slowly. Sometimes they argued over the order of manuscripts. Sometimes they debated whether certain notes had been intended for publication at all. Frequently, they simply stopped working. Not from exhaustion, because they would unexpectedly discover a familiar sentence written in Michel's unmistakable hand. For a moment it felt as though he had only stepped outside. Weeks became months. Months became years. The political world outside Salon continued changing. France drifted deeper into religious conflict. Violence spread from city to city. Catholics and Protestants accused one another of destroying God's true church. Families divided. Neighbors became enemies. Entire towns prepared for war. It seemed as though many of Michel's darkest fears were beginning to unfold. People searched his prophecies with renewed desperation. Every battle, every assassination, every epidemic, every strange celestial event. Someone somewhere claimed Nostradamus had predicted it. Booksellers noticed something remarkable. Demand for less prophecies increased instead of fading. Customers arrived asking for copies. Noblemen requested expensive editions. Travelers carried worn volumes across borders. Students copied verses by hand when printed books could not be found. His words had begun traveling farther in death than they ever had during life. Then came 1568, 2 years after Michel's death. A new edition finally appeared. For the first time, readers could obtain what many believe to be the complete collection of the famous prophecies. 10 centuries, hundreds of quatrains, some polished, others mysterious, many more confusing than ever. The printers expected respectable sales. Instead, they watched astonishment unfold. The first printing disappeared almost immediately. Additional copies followed, then more. Books crossed France, then Italy, then the Holy Roman Empire, then England, then beyond. Everywhere people argued over the same question. What did they mean? Imagine opening the book for the first time. There are no chapter titles explaining the prophecies, no helpful commentary, no timeline, no instructions. Only short 4-line poems filled with symbols, strange imagery, anagrams, references to ancient history, fragments of Latin, Provençal expressions, astrology, biblical echoes, and obscure geography. It felt less like reading a book, more like entering a labyrinth. Each reader emerged believing something different. That ambiguity became its greatest strength. A clear prediction can only be fulfilled once. An unclear prediction can survive forever. One reader discovered warnings of war. Another found promises of peace. His enemies claimed they predicted his downfall. Merchants searched for signs of economic prosperity. Priests searched for evidence of divine judgment. Astrologers searched for celestial patterns. Skeptics searched for mistakes. Every generation found exactly what it was looking for. That is an extraordinary achievement for any book. Very few works survive because everyone agrees with them. The greatest survive because no one can stop arguing about them. Centuries passed. Empires rose. Empires collapsed. Languages evolved. Borders shifted. Religions divided. Science transformed humanity's understanding of the universe. Still, the book remained. Printers modernized the spelling. Editors translated the French. Scholars debated missing manuscripts. Collectors searched for rare editions. Libraries locked priceless copies behind glass. Ordinary readers continued purchasing inexpensive paperbacks. The format changed. The fascination never did. How many books written in the 16th century are still read by millions? Very few. How many remain continuously in print for more than 4 centuries? Almost none. Yet less prophecies refused to disappear. Part of its survival came from history itself. Whenever disaster struck, someone reached for Nostradamus. The Great Fire of London, the French Revolution, Napoleon, industrialization, world wars, economic collapse, terrorist attacks, global pandemics. Each crisis renewed public fascination. Each generation believed perhaps this time the mysterious verses had finally revealed their true meaning. It became an endless cycle. Fear produced interpretation. Interpretation produced belief. Belief produced new readers. New readers produced new interpretations. The book fed itself across the centuries. Psychologists would later describe this tendency with terms such as confirmation bias and hindsight bias. Historians would study how people naturally impose patterns upon uncertain events. But ordinary readers rarely approached the book as psychologists. They approached it as human beings. Human beings want answers, especially during uncertain times. The future frightens us because it refuses to reveal itself. Nostradamus seemed to whisper that perhaps someone had already seen tomorrow. Perhaps history was not random. Perhaps suffering possessed hidden meaning. Hope can be born from certainty, but it can also be born from mystery. Ironically, The greatest monument Michel ever built required neither marble nor stone. He left no cathedral, no palace, no empire, only words. Ink upon paper, fragile, easily burned, easily lost, yet somehow more durable than granite. Stone eventually cracks. Paper survives whenever another reader chooses to turn the page. And generation after generation, someone always did. By the 21st century, Michel de Nostradamus had become something few historical figures ever achieve. He no longer belonged exclusively to history. He belonged to popular culture. His face appeared in documentaries, films, novels, television series, newspaper headlines, internet forums, podcasts, and conspiracy theories. People who had never read a single quatrain still recognized his name. Children knew him simply as the man who predicted the future. Whether that description was fair no longer mattered. Legends rarely ask permission from facts. They grow according to humanity's imagination. The physician from Solanda province had become larger than the man himself, perhaps far larger than he ever wished. Yet somewhere beneath centuries of speculation, beneath endless arguments and sensational headlines, the real Michel still waited quietly. Not inside crystal balls, not inside supernatural myths, but inside the pages he left behind. Pages still asking readers the same question they had asked for more than 400 years. Not what will happen, but something far more unsettling. How certain are you that you understand what you are reading? History remembers very few people without choosing sides. Some become heroes. Others become villains. Some are praised as visionaries. Others are dismissed as fools. But every so often, a figure emerges who refuses to fit neatly into any category. A person whose life becomes a battlefield long after they are gone. Not because armies fight over their land, but because generations fight over their meaning. Michel de Nostradamus became one of those rare figures. His body had scarcely been laid to rest before the arguments began. Was he a prophet? A gifted physician? A brilliant poet? A master psychologist? A fraud? Or simply a man whose imagination proved more durable than any kingdom of his age? For nearly 5 centuries, the debate has never truly ended. It has merely changed languages. The controversy had actually begun long before his death. When Les Prophecies first appeared in 1555, readers did not react with quiet curiosity. They reacted with suspicion. Europe was living through one of the most unstable periods in its history. The Protestant Reformation had fractured Christendom. The Catholic Church was responding with the Counter-Reformation. Every unusual idea carried political consequences. Every mysterious book risked attracting accusations of heresy. To many church officials, prophecy belonged exclusively to Scripture. God had spoken through the prophets of the Old Testament, through the apostles, through Christ himself. Who, then, was this provincial physician claiming to glimpse centuries yet unborn? Some theologians regarded the book as dangerous, not because they believed it was true, because they feared ordinary people might believe it. Others accused Michel of disguising forbidden astrology beneath poetic language. Still others whispered darker rumors. Perhaps his visions came from forbidden spirits. Perhaps his nightly rituals invited demonic influence. Perhaps those bowls of water and midnight meditations were not innocent acts of contemplation at all. Rumors spread far faster than facts. They always have. Yet Michel also attracted powerful defenders. Many scholars argued that astrology, when properly understood, was not incompatible with Christian belief. They reminded critics that respected astronomers still calculated horoscopes. Kings employed court astrologers openly. Universities taught celestial influences alongside medicine. The intellectual world of the 16th century was far more complicated than modern readers often imagine. The boundary between astronomy and astrology had not yet fully separated. Neither had medicine and philosophy, nor science and mysticism. Michel lived precisely at that crossroads. Judging him solely by modern standards misses the world he actually inhabited. Jean-Aimé de Chavigny devoted much of his life to protecting his master's reputation. He believed completely in Michel's sincerity. He never described Nostradamus as a magician, never portrayed him as a sorcerer. Instead, Chavigny insisted that Michel possessed extraordinary wisdom, deep religious faith, and unusual insight into the rhythms of history. His writings helped shape the earliest image of Nostradamus after his death. Without Chavigny, the legend might have developed very differently. Then history itself intervened. In July 1559, King Henry II died after a horrific jousting accident. The event shocked Europe. Almost immediately, readers rediscovered one particular quatrain. It described a young lion overcoming an older lion, a lance passing through a golden cage, two wounds becoming one, the king dying a cruel death. Could Michel truly have foreseen such a tragedy? Believers thought the answer obvious. How else could anyone explain such remarkable similarities? Skeptics responded differently. They pointed out that medieval tournaments frequently caused fatal injuries. Kings often participated. Symbolic language about lions and battle was common in Renaissance poetry. Only after Henry's death had readers connected the verses to that specific event. Both arguments contained elements of truth. Both would continue echoing for centuries. Every generation repeated the same pattern. An extraordinary event occurred. Readers searched les prophecies. Someone discovered verses that seemed astonishingly appropriate. The legend grew. When London burned in 1666, interpreters claimed Nostradamus had foreseen flames consuming the great city. When the French Revolution erupted in 1789, others insisted he had predicted the fall of the monarchy. When Napoleon Bonaparte rose from obscure Corsican officer to Emperor of the French, admirers searched the quatrains for hidden references to his astonishing career. One verse mentioning an emperor born near Italy became widely associated with Napoleon. Was the connection convincing? To some readers, absolutely. To others, not at all. The disagreement itself kept the book alive. Then came the 19th century. Industrialization transformed Europe. Steam engines replaced horses. Factories replaced workshops. Railroads shrank distances that had once required weeks of travel. Science advanced with breathtaking speed. One might expect interest in ancient prophecies to disappear. Instead, something unexpected happened. It increased. The faster society changed, the more people searched for certainty. Progress created opportunity. It also created anxiety. Machines altered daily life faster than many could comprehend. Old traditions weakened. Religious authority declined. Political revolutions shook entire nations. Whenever humanity loses confidence in the present, it often begins searching the past for guidance. Nostradamus benefited from that search. The 20th century amplified his legend beyond anything Michel himself could have imagined. 2 world wars devastated civilization. Tens of millions perished. Ancient empires collapsed. New ideologies promised paradise while delivering catastrophe. Again, readers opened less prophecies. Some believed the verses foretold Adolf Hitler. Others insisted they predicted Winston Churchill. Still others claimed they anticipated nuclear weapons. Perhaps the most famous example centered on the mysterious word Hister. To modern readers, the resemblance to Hitler seems obvious. Entire books have been written around this apparent coincidence. Yet historians quickly point out another possibility. Hister was an older geographical name associated with the lower Danube River. Michel almost certainly knew this classical usage. Did he mean the river? Did he mean a future dictator? Or did later generations simply notice a similarity that never existed in the author's mind? No surviving document answers the question. The mystery remains. Even governments occasionally recognize the extraordinary influence of Nostradamus. During the Second World War, both Allied and Axis propagandists circulated forged prophecies supposedly written centuries earlier. Some predicted German victory. Others predicted Nazi defeat. Most had nothing whatsoever to do with Michel's original writings. Yet millions believed them. That fact reveals something profound. The legend had become more powerful than the text itself. People no longer needed authentic quatrains. They merely needed the name Nostradamus. His reputation alone carried persuasive force. By the late 20th century, television transformed him once again. Documentaries presented dramatic reenactments. Narrators spoke in mysterious voices. Dark music accompanied ancient manuscripts. Every global crisis inspired new specials. Every approaching millennium revived old predictions. Bookstores displayed fresh interpretations beside astrology manuals and conspiracy literature. Then came the internet. Information spread instantly. So did misinformation. One fabricated prophecy could circle the globe in minutes. Many verses attributed to Nostradamus online had never been written by him at all. Yet they continued spreading because they satisfied a deeply human desire. People long to believe someone, somewhere, already understands the chaos surrounding them. Professional historians approached the matter differently. They asked difficult questions. Did Michel ever publish a prediction that clearly described a future event before it occurred? Can every famous, fulfilled prophecy be documented without relying on hindsight? How accurate are modern translations? Did later editors alter certain texts? How reliable are surviving manuscripts? These questions rarely produce dramatic television programs, but they matter. Historical truth usually emerges through patient investigation rather than sensational revelation. Many scholars concluded that Nostradamus wrote deliberately ambiguous poetry, not because he possessed supernatural knowledge, because ambiguity protected him politically while allowing readers to apply his words broadly. It was, in their view, literary genius rather than prophetic power. Psychologists offered yet another explanation. Human beings evolved to recognize patterns. The ability to notice connections helped our ancestors survive. A rustling bush might hide a predator. Dark clouds might announce dangerous weather. Recognizing meaningful patterns became essential for life. The problem is that the same remarkable ability sometimes detects patterns where none actually exist. A coincidence becomes destiny. Random events become hidden design. Vague poetry becomes precise prediction. This tendency does not indicate foolishness. It indicates humanity. Our minds constantly organize uncertainty into stories. Stories help us make sense of reality. Believers answer with questions of their own. Can every remarkable coincidence truly be dismissed? Why do certain quatrains continue astonishing readers across generations? Why did Michel repeatedly insist he possessed a genuine method? Could intuition reveal possibilities beyond ordinary perception? Does science already explain every capacity of the human mind? They argue that dismissing every unexplained phenomenon simply because it challenges conventional understanding reflects its own form of intellectual certainty. Perhaps mystery deserves humility. Perhaps history still contains questions awaiting answers. And perhaps that is why the debate survives. Not because either side has achieved complete victory, but because neither side can. Every argument produces another counterargument. Every certainty encounters another doubt. Every generation reopens the case, like a trial without end. Imagine Michel himself listening quietly to these debates. Would he laugh? Would he shake his head? Would he recognize the legendary figure people describe? Perhaps not. The real Michel was neither an infallible oracle nor an obvious charlatan. He was something far more interesting. A Renaissance thinker standing between two worlds. One foot planted firmly in medieval tradition, the other cautiously reaching toward the modern age. He practiced medicine using observation while believing in astrology. He embraced scholarship while accepting mystery. He valued reason without abandoning faith. Contradictions defined his world because contradictions defined every period of profound change. Our own age is no different. Today, nearly 500 years after his death, libraries still preserve his books. Universities still study his language. Historians still debate his intentions. Skeptics still challenge his reputation. Believers still defend it. Filmmakers still dramatize his visions. Readers still underline his verses. The conversation has never truly paused. Perhaps it never will. Because beneath every argument about Nostradamus lies a much older question. A question humanity has asked since the first people looked upward at the stars. Can the future be known? Or do we only imagine that we see tomorrow because we fear admitting how little we truly understand today? Michel de Nostradame never gave us a definitive answer. Instead, he left us a mystery. And sometimes, a mystery can outlive certainty itself. History has a peculiar habit. It slowly strips away the humanity of extraordinary people. Kings become statues. Generals become dates in textbooks. Scientists become discoveries. Artists become masterpieces. The living, breathing human being, the person who laughed, doubted, failed, loved, and feared, gradually disappears beneath centuries of storytelling. The same fate befell Michel de Nostradame. To some, he became the world's greatest prophet. To others, the world's greatest fraud. To popular culture, he became an old man in mysterious robes, peering into a crystal ball while predicting the end of civilization. None of those images truly resemble the man who once walked the dusty streets of Provence. To understand Michel, we must forget everything we think we know. Forget the television documentaries. Forget the conspiracy theories. Forget the countless predictions attributed to him centuries after his death. Instead, return to 16th century France. Return to a frightened little boy growing up in a world where tomorrow was never guaranteed. Michel entered a world that felt permanently uncertain. Europe was changing with astonishing speed. The Renaissance had awakened old ideas buried for centuries. Ancient Greek philosophy returned to universities. Printing presses multiplied books faster than monks could copy them. Explorers crossed oceans that previous generations believed impossible to navigate. At the same time, plague continued visiting cities without warning. Religious conflict fractured families. Wars erupted with frightening regularity. Life expectancy remained painfully short. Children died before reaching adulthood. Mothers died giving birth. Harvests failed. Kings fell. Entire villages vanished beneath waves of disease. Modern people often imagine history as a steady march toward progress. To Michelle's generation, history looked very different. It felt unpredictable, chaotic, fragile. Every sunrise carried possibility. Every sunset carried uncertainty. Perhaps that is why the question of the future fascinated him from such an early age. His family shaped him in ways few outsiders understood. His grandfathers possessed Jewish ancestry, but had converted to Christianity decades earlier. That conversion protected the family from persecution. Yet memory survived where public identity changed. Inside the household, Michel inherited more than names. He inherited curiosity, respect for scholarship, love of languages, reverence for books. His grandfather Jean became one of the greatest influences of his childhood. The elderly scholar introduced Michel to mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and classical literature. Knowledge, he insisted, belonged to everyone willing to pursue it. Books were not ornaments. They were conversations across centuries. Michel listened carefully. Long before he became famous, he had already fallen in love with learning itself. As a young man, he traveled farther than most people of his generation could imagine. Universities exposed him to physicians, philosophers, mathematicians, and astronomers. Roads introduced him to ordinary people, farmers, merchants, pilgrims, soldiers, widows. Travel teaches lessons no classroom can provide. Every town possessed different customs, different fears, different beliefs. Michel discovered that human suffering sounded remarkably similar in every language. A grieving mother in Provence cried the same tears as one in northern France. Fear ignored borders. Hope did too. Then came the plague. Nothing shaped Michel more profoundly. The Black Death had haunted Europe for generations. Entire communities remembered stories of carts overflowing with bodies, church bells ringing endlessly, families disappearing within days. When plague returned during Michel's lifetime, panic spread faster than infection itself. Many physicians fled. Some genuinely feared becoming infected. Others believed nothing could be done. Michel chose differently. He stayed. He treated patients, not because he possessed miraculous cures. He did not. No physician of the 16th century truly understood infectious disease. But Michel believed that cleanliness, fresh air, proper nutrition, and careful observation improved a patient's chances. By modern standards, many of his medical ideas were incomplete. Some were simply wrong. Others, remarkably, moved in directions later medicine would confirm. He encouraged sanitation, rejected unnecessary bloodletting in many cases, questioned blind obedience to ancient authorities. Most importantly, he remained beside the sick when many others would not. That courage earned him lasting respect, not because he always succeeded, because he refused to abandon people already facing death. Yet even physicians cannot protect those they love. When plague claimed his first wife and young children, Michel discovered a truth more devastating than any disease. Knowledge has limits. Skill has limits. Love itself sometimes has limits. No amount of intelligence could save his family. No medicine could bargain with mortality. For years afterward, he wandered France. Some historians believe he sought work. Others think he sought healing. Perhaps both are true. Grief rarely follows a straight path. One day it resembles despair. The next day determination. Then silence. Then unexpected laughter followed immediately by guilt. Michel experienced every stage. Those years transformed him forever. Eventually life offered another beginning. Marriage too and Ponsard restored stability. Children filled the house once more. Professional success returned. Royal recognition followed. Outwardly, Michel appeared prosperous. But grief leaves fingerprints invisible to everyone except the person carrying them. Perhaps this explains why so many of his writings return repeatedly to themes of loss, catastrophe, and human vulnerability. People often write not about what they know. They write about what they fear losing. Then came the nights. The famous nights. Candles flickering. Silence filling the attic. Stars crossing the heavens. A brass tripod supporting a shallow bowl of water. These images would later inspire legends of supernatural rituals. Reality was probably more complicated. Michel himself described prayer, meditation, astrological calculation, reflection, long periods of concentration. Whatever occurred during those solitary hours, one fact remains beyond dispute. He worked relentlessly, page after page, verse after verse, revision after revision. Inspiration alone never produces 1,000 quatrains. Discipline does. People often imagine prophets speaking with complete certainty. Michel rarely displayed such confidence. His writings overflow with symbols rather than declarations, possibilities rather than guarantees, warnings rather than absolute predictions. He seemed deeply aware that language itself could never perfectly capture whatever he believed he perceived. Perhaps that explains the cryptic style. Not deliberate deception, but genuine difficulty describing experiences beyond ordinary vocabulary. Or perhaps he intentionally embraced ambiguity. History cannot answer with certainty. The mystery survives because the evidence remains incomplete. His relationship with fame was equally complicated. Recognition brought wealth. It also attracted enemies. Courtiers sought his advice. Critics mocked him publicly. Supporters praised him extravagantly. Skeptics accused him of manipulation. He experienced something surprisingly familiar to modern audiences: the burden of public reputation. Once society creates an image of someone, escaping that image becomes nearly impossible. People stopped seeing Michel. They saw a symbol, an idea, a legend already forming around a living man. Imagine the exhaustion. Every unusual event demanded interpretation. Every rumor sought confirmation. Every noble visitor hoped for reassurance. Every frightened petitioner wanted certainty. Yet Michel possessed no magical certainty to offer. Only observations, calculations, poetry, faith, and perhaps intuition. Whether that intuition reached beyond ordinary human perception remains one of history's greatest unanswered questions. His greatest contradiction may also have been his greatest strength. He accepted uncertainty. Modern culture often rewards confidence. Michel repeatedly returned to mystery. He admitted that future events appeared fragmented, incomplete, clouded by symbols. Even believers sometimes overlook this important detail. Michel never claimed omniscience. He claimed glimpses, fragments, shadows. That distinction matters enormously. By the end of his life, he had become one of Europe's most recognizable intellectuals. Kings knew his name. Queens requested his presence. Printers competed to publish his works. Ordinary readers debated his verses. Yet beneath extraordinary fame remained the same curious boy who once listened to his grandfather explain the movements of stars. Fame had enlarged his audience. It had not changed his deepest questions. So, who was Michel de Nostradamus? Was he a physician? Yes. A husband? Certainly. A father? Without question. A scholar? Undeniably. A poet? His surviving work answers that itself. Was he a prophet? History cannot provide a unanimous verdict. Perhaps it never will. But maybe that question has distracted us from something far more important. Whether or not Michel accurately foresaw specific future events, he unquestionably understood something profound about human nature. He understood that every generation fears tomorrow. Every civilization believes it stands upon the edge of catastrophe. Every family wonders what lies beyond the horizon. Every individual longs for certainty in an uncertain universe. Those anxieties remain unchanged after nearly 5 centuries. His prophecies endured because they addressed emotions that never disappear. Fear, hope, curiosity, wonder. These are timeless. Michel de Nostradamus was not immortal because every prediction proved true. He became immortal because he transformed humanity's oldest question into unforgettable poetry. He invited readers into uncertainty instead of pretending uncertainty did not exist. And perhaps that is why his voice continues echoing across the centuries. Not because he always knew the future, but because he understood the people who desperately wanted someone to know it. History remembers countless rulers whose kingdoms have vanished. It remembers conquerors whose empires became dust. It remembers generals whose victories are now forgotten. Yet a physician from a small Provençal town, armed with nothing more than books, ink, and impossible questions, continues inspiring debate nearly 500 years after his final breath. That is a different kind of victory, one measured not in territory, but in memory. And memory can outlast even history itself. Epilogue. The last question expanded. The room is empty now. The candles have long since burned away. The ink has dried. The wooden desk where Michel de Nostradamus spent countless nights writing beneath the silence of the stars has vanished into history. The brass tripod is gone. The bowl of still water that inspired centuries of speculation has disappeared. The house itself has changed owners many times. Generations have walked through those rooms without ever hearing the voice that once filled them. And yet, 5 centuries later, Michel de Nostradamus is still speaking, not with his own voice, with ours. Every age recreates Nostradamus in its own image. The 17th century saw a prophet of kings. The 18th century found a witness to revolution. The 19th century searched his verses for the rise and fall of empires. The 20th century looked for world wars, dictators, nuclear weapons, and global catastrophe. The 21st century asked whether he predicted pandemics, terrorism, artificial intelligence, financial collapse, climate change, and the uncertain future of civilization itself. The names change. The fears remain. Perhaps that is the true secret behind his extraordinary endurance. His writings have survived because humanity has not changed nearly as much as we like to believe. Look around the modern world. We have crossed oceans in hours instead of months. We speak instantly with people on the opposite side of the planet. We have walked upon the moon. We have photographed black holes. We have mapped the human genome. We have built machines capable of learning. Entire libraries now fit inside devices small enough to slip into a pocket. To Michel, such things would have seemed indistinguishable from miracles. Yet despite all of our astonishing achievements, one question still refuses to disappear. What happens tomorrow? Today we no longer gather around bowls of water. Instead, we gather around computer screens. Our prophets no longer wear Renaissance robes. They wear laboratory coats, business suits, headsets. They work inside universities, research laboratories, financial institutions, weather centers, and technology companies. Instead of astrology, they use algorithms. Instead of planetary conjunctions, they analyze unimaginably vast quantities of data. Instead of quatrains, they produce statistical models. But look closely. The goal has hardly changed. Predict tomorrow. Predict the economy. Predict disease. Predict elections. Predict conflict. Predict the climate. Predict markets. Predict human behavior. Every generation invents new tools. Every generation pursues the same dream: to know the future before it arrives. Artificial intelligence can examine billions of pieces of information in seconds. Meteorologists forecast hurricanes days before they make landfall. Medical researchers identify patterns invisible to the human eye. Astronomers calculate eclipses centuries into the future. Economists forecast growth. Governments forecast populations. Scientists forecast rising oceans. Our predictions have become far more sophisticated than anything available in the 16th century. Yet certainty remains just beyond our reach. One unexpected discovery changes everything. One volcanic eruption, one economic collapse, one assassination, one virus, one war, one invention. History continues reminding us that tomorrow remains wonderfully and terrifyingly unpredictable. Michel would have understood that feeling, not the technology, the uncertainty, because uncertainty shaped every moment of his life. He lived through plague, political violence, religious division, economic instability, rapid scientific change. He watched old certainties disappear while new ideas struggled to replace them. In many ways, his world resembles ours more than we might expect. That may explain why his writings continue attracting readers who disagree about almost everything else. Historians, scientists, religious believers, skeptics, novelists, philosophers, conspiracy theorists, psychologists. Each opens the same book. Each discovers something different. Some see evidence of supernatural foresight. Others see brilliant literary craftsmanship. Still others see an extraordinary lesson about the human tendency to search for patterns. Perhaps the most remarkable fact is not that people disagree. It is that they continue caring enough to argue. Nearly 5 centuries after his death. That alone is extraordinary. Imagine, for a moment, that Michel truly could see us. Not our names, not our individual lives. Only the distant future he believed waited beyond his own century. What would surprise him most? Would it be aircraft crossing oceans? Cities glowing through the darkness? Satellites orbiting Earth? Artificial intelligence composing music and answering questions? Or perhaps none of those things. Perhaps he would recognize something far more familiar. Children still laughing. Parents still worrying. Leaders still promising impossible futures. Nations still fearing one another. People still searching for hope whenever the world grows uncertain. Technology has transformed civilization. Human nature has remained astonishingly constant. That may be why the legend of Nostradamus refuses to die. Not because every prediction came true. Not because every skeptical explanation is complete. But because he reminds us of something profoundly human. We are creatures who look beyond the horizon. We always have been. Long before telescopes, before satellites, before supercomputers, human beings stood beneath the stars asking exactly the same question. What comes next? Perhaps that question matters more than any answer. Because the future has never belonged exclusively to prophets. It belongs to everyone willing to shape it. He could not prevent plague. He could not stop war. He could not save every patient. He could not rescue his first wife and children from disease. He could not prevent King Henry II's tragic death. He could not halt the religious violence consuming France. Whether he foresaw those events or not, he still lived through them. Like every human being, the future, once it arrives, becomes the present. And the present, not prediction. There is another reason his story still matters. It reminds us that curiosity is among humanity's greatest strengths. Michel never stopped asking questions. He questioned medicine. He questioned history. He questioned the heavens. He questioned scripture. He questioned himself. Sometimes he reached brilliant conclusions. Sometimes he reached mistaken ones. But he continued. Civilizations advance because people continue asking questions whose answers remain uncertain. Every scientific discovery begins as curiosity. Every great work of art begins as imagination. Every journey into the unknown begins with someone willing to wonder. In that sense, Michel de Nostradamus belongs not only to history. He belongs to everyone who has ever looked beyond the limits of current knowledge. So, was Nostradamus a prophet? History cannot answer that question with complete certainty. The surviving evidence allows room for belief. It allows room for skepticism. It allows room for debate. And perhaps that is exactly where it should remain. Because certainty often ends conversations. Mystery keeps them alive. 500 years ago, an aging physician sat alone beneath candlelight, writing cryptic verses that he hoped future generations might someday understand. He never saw steam engines, electricity, television, the internet, spaceflight, artificial intelligence. He never imagined billions of people connected across continents in an instant. Yet somehow, across all those centuries, his voice endured, not because history proved him right, not because history proved him wrong, but because history never stopped asking the same questions that haunted him. Perhaps that is his greatest legacy. Not prophecy, not prediction, but perspective. The reminder that every generation believes its fears are unique. Every generation believes its crises are unprecedented. Every generation imagines itself standing at the edge of history. Then time moves forward, and another generation inherits the same uncertainties under different names. Michel de Nostradamus spent his life searching for tomorrow. We spend ours doing exactly the same. The tools have changed. The questions have not. And maybe, just maybe, The future has never been something waiting to be discovered. Perhaps it has always been something waiting to be created. So, as we close the final page of his story, one question remains. Not the question of whether Nostradamus truly predicted the future. That debate will continue long after we are gone. The real question is far more personal. If someone placed tomorrow in your hands, if you knew every triumph, every tragedy, every joy, every heartbreak, every mistake, every ending, would you live or would you still choose hope, knowing that uncertainty is what gives hope its meaning? Michel de Nostradame never found a final answer. Neither have we. And perhaps that is why his story still matters. Because the future has never belonged to those who claim to know it. It belongs to those brave enough to walk toward it anyway. That is the legacy of the physician from Salon de Provence. Not a man who conquered time, but a man who spent his brief, extraordinary life asking humanity's oldest question, and inspired countless generations to keep asking it after he was gone. The French court is the most magnificent prison in the world. Every surface is gilded. Every meal is a feast. Every night is a ball, a mask, a celebration of power and wealth and beauty. The king is young, handsome, charismatic. His mistress, Diane de Poitiers, is the most beautiful woman in France. His courtiers are poets, warriors, and diplomats, the best and brightest of a golden age. And Michel de Nostradame hates every moment of it. He is given apartments in the Louvre, a suite of rooms that would cost a fortune in any city. He is given a salary, generous, regular, more money than he has ever made as a doctor. He is given clothes, velvet, silk, fur, that mark him as a person of importance. He is given everything except what he wants. Freedom, privacy, the ability to speak his mind without fear. At court, every word is weighed. Every glance is analyzed. Every friendship is a potential alliance. Every enemy a potential assassin. Michel cannot walk through the gardens without being followed by spies. He cannot write a letter without it being read by the Queen's agents. He cannot look at the stars without someone asking what he sees. He is a prisoner in a golden cage, and the cage is getting smaller. Henry II loves jousting. It is his passion, his obsession, his escape from the pressures of kingship. He trains for hours every day. He enters every tournament. He has never been defeated. His skill with a lance is legendary, his courage unquestioned. He is 35 years old, in the prime of life, strong, fast, fearless. And Michel has predicted his death in a joust. Michel watches Henry practice. He watches the king charge down the lists, his lance aimed at his opponent's shield, his horse thundering beneath him. He watches the splinters fly, the shields crack, the crowd cheer. And he sees it. He sees the moment that he wrote about, the young lion overcoming the older, the golden cage, the visor of the king's helmet, gleaming in the sun. The two wounds in one, a splinter piercing the eye, driving into the brain. He sees it as clearly as if it is happening before him, and he cannot stop it. He tries. He tells Catherine. He begs her to forbid the king from jousting. He warns her that the prophecy is approaching, that the danger is real, that every tournament brings Henry closer to his fate. Catherine listens. She believes him, or she wants to believe him. But she cannot control her husband. Henry is the king. He does what he wants, and what he wants is to joust. She forbids the most dangerous tournaments. She limits the number of challengers. She insists on extra safety measures, thicker armor, blunter lances, stricter rules. But Henry finds ways around every restriction. He justs in private. He justs in secret. He justs because he is young and strong and immortal, and no prophecy can touch him. And Michel watches, helpless. The years pass. Michel remains at court. He casts horoscopes for the royal children: Francis, Elizabeth, Claude, Charles, Henry, Margaret, and the others. He advises Catherine on political matters, which alliances to make, which enemies to watch, which dates are auspicious for important decisions. He becomes indispensable, and he becomes invisible. No one sees him anymore. He is part of the furniture of the court, the quiet old man in the corner, the astrologer who never smiles, the prophet who never prophesies in public. He writes, secretly, at night, in his rooms. He adds to the centuries. He records his visions. He builds the monument that will outlast them all. But his heart is not in it. His heart is in Salonda province, with and the children. His heart is in the attic, with the bowl of water and the brass tripod. His heart is in the stars, not in the gilded halls of the Louvre. And then, in June 1559, everything changes. June 30th, 1559. The Place de Vosges, Paris. Henry II is celebrating the Peace of Cateau-Cambrésis, the end of 20 years of war with Spain. The treaty has been signed. The hostages exchanged. The kingdom is at peace. To mark the occasion, Henry has organized a grand tournament. The noblest knights in France have gathered to compete. The king himself will be the final challenger. Michel is there. He stands in the royal box, next to Catherine. He watches Henry mount his horse. He watches the king take his lance. He watches him charge down the lists toward his opponent, a Scottish captain named Gabriel de Montgomery. And he sees Montgomery's lance strike Henry's helmet. He sees the lance shatter. He sees the splinter, a long, jagged piece of wood, fly through the air. He sees it enter the visor of Henry's helmet. He sees it pierce the king's eye. He sees it drive into his brain. He sees it all. And he screams. The sound that comes out of Michel's mouth is not human. It is the sound of a man who has watched the future unfold exactly as he predicted, exactly as he feared, exactly as he tried to prevent. It is the sound of a man who knows that his prophecy has just killed a king. Henry falls from his horse. The crowd goes silent. For a moment, no one moves. Then the screaming starts. The queen, the courtiers, the thousands of spectators who have just watched their king die before their eyes. Michel does not move. He stands there, frozen, as the world collapses around him. He has seen this moment 1,000 times in his visions. He has written about it, warned about it, tried to prevent it. And now it is real. Now it is happening. Now a man is dead because Michel de Nostradamus looked into a bowl of water and saw the future. What have I done? The question echoes in his mind. Not for the first time, not for the last. But this time it is louder. This time, it is accompanied by the screams of a widow and the silence of a kingdom. Catherine does not blame him. At least, not publicly. She knows that Michel warned her. She knows that he tried to prevent this. She knows that the fault lies with Henry's stubbornness, not with Michel's vision. But she also knows something else. She knows that Michel de Nostradamus is the most dangerous man in France. Because he was right. Because his prophecy came true. Because everyone, the court, the church, the people, now knows that this quiet doctor from Provence can see the future. And that makes him more powerful than any king. Catherine becomes regent. Henry's eldest son, Francis, too, is only 15 years old. He is sickly, weak, dominated by his wife, Mary, Queen of Scots, and her uncles, the powerful Guy's family. Catherine rules in his name. She rules through him. She rules despite him. And she keeps Michel close. Not as a prisoner, that would be too obvious, but as a pet, a curiosity, a court astrologer who is available whenever she needs him, invisible whenever she does not. Michel accepts. What choice does he have? He is 55 years old. His health is failing. The gout that started in Marseille has spread to every joint in his body. His hands, once steady enough to perform surgery, now shake so badly that he can barely hold a pen. His eyes, once sharp enough to read the stars, are starting to dim. He is dying. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. And he knows it. But he also knows something else. He knows that his work is not finished. He has written nearly 1,000 quatrains. But there are more visions, more futures, more warnings that the world needs to hear. So he writes. In the small hours of the night, when the court is asleep and the palace is silent, Michel sits at his desk and writes. He writes about events that will not happen for centuries. He writes about wars and revolutions and disasters that no one alive will ever see. He writes about the end of the world and the beginning of whatever comes after. And he writes about one thing more. He writes about himself. Quatrain 6-100. The last one bearing the name of the prophet will take Diana for his day of rest. He will wander far because of a frantic head and delivering a great people from subjection. Quatrain 8-1. Pow, nay, Laurent, more fire than blood will be. Swimming in praise, the great one will be consoled when the enemies are expelled from the Bashkir, and he cannot establish himself in Toulouse. These are the last quatrains, the ones that predict his own death, his own legacy, his own immortality. He does not know if they are true. He does not know if anyone will ever understand them. He only knows that he must write them, because writing is the only thing that keeps him alive. And then, in 1560, another blow. Francis II dies. He is 16 years old. He has been king for less than 18 months. He dies of an ear infection, a trivial thing, easily treatable with modern medicine, fatal in the 16th century. Catherine is devastated, not because she loved Francis. She loved all her children, but Francis was never her favorite. She is devastated because Francis's death means that her second son, Charles, must become king. Charles IX. He is 10 years old, a child, and Catherine must rule in his name for years to come. Michel watches this from the sidelines. He is no longer at the center of power. Catherine has other astrologers now. Luke Gorick, the most famous of them, who flatters her and tells her what she wants to hear. Michel is old, sick, inconvenient. He speaks truths that no one wants to hear. So he is sent away. Not exiled. That would draw attention, but encouraged to return to Salon de Provence, to rest, to recover, to be with his family. He goes willingly, because he is tired of the court, tired of the prophecies, tired of watching the future unfold like a horror story he cannot stop. He wants to go home, and in 1560 he does, but the world will not let him rest. Because in 1562, the wars of religion began, and Michel de Nostradamus will watch his country tear itself apart.